So it's just a good section.
Yeah, so this is the one that's at Owen Park. Hey,
You could
the
just
bathroom's
doesn't
like
it?
over the parking lot.
It might be.
That, you know?
We'll find out.
It's all the same.
Very good.
We're recording. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the regularly scheduled city council meeting for October 21st. If you could all stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One.
Oh, let's check everybody's.
If we could get a roll call, please.
Councilmember Stroman,
Here.
Councilmember Walker,
Here.
Councilmember Engel,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hagan,
Here.
Mayor Bellinger.
Here. All right. First up, we have, I'm sorry, my agenda didn't come up here.
Right.
Presentation, certificate of recognition, Officer Baldonado. Chief, I believe this is you? Officer Baldonado?
On November 13th, 2022, you and Officer Murray were dispatched to a house fire on Franklin Street. Upon arrival at the residence, the house was in flames, and you, along with Officer Murray, evacuated the residence. After escorting an elderly woman out, the two of you entered the burning home to check for additional people, when you located an elderly, bedridden man in a hospital bed. You picked him up and carried him from the residence. Had you not carried him from the house, he would have likely died, as he was unable to walk and the ceiling collapsed during the fire. Excellent work.
Yeah, the only thing I would like to say is I didn't do it alone. It was Officer Murray that was there with me at the time. As a trainee, he stepped up and showed excellent courage and discipline during that time as well. So without him, I couldn't have done it. Thank you, guys.
All right. Next up, we also have a presentation for Men's Health Awareness Month proclamation. I'd like to read that to everybody. So, proclamation of the Escalon City Council recognizing the month of November 2024 as Men's Health Awareness Month. Whereas Men's Health Awareness Month is an annual event held in November to help raise of the men's health issues, including prostate, testicular cancer, mental health, and suicide. And whereas 1 in 7 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in his lifetime, and treatment options for prostate cancer vary depending on age, stage, and grade of cancer, as well as general current health. And whereas testicular cancer is the most common cancer in males between the ages of 18 and 34, and whereas 1 in 4 adults in the United States will experience a mental health problem in any given year, and whereas nearly 100 men in the United States die by suicide every day. And now, therefore, I, David Bellinger, Mayor of the City of Escalon, on behalf of the Escalon City Council, do recognize the month of November 2024 as Men's Health Awareness Month and join communities across our nation to challenge men to spark conversation, to raise awareness of the impact of men's health issues has on our community, and to take action to help diagnose early and seek preventative care, and to pay tribute to those who have lost their lives to these diseases. This date, November 4th of 2024. Thank you so much. All right, up next, we have the consent calendar. These items are considered routine in nature and are acted upon by a single action unless requested by an individual council member or member of the public for special consideration. Do we have any items here to pull? The council or anybody in the audience that would like to pull an item on the consent calendar tonight? If not, I'll take a motion.
A motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Do you have a second to that?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Up next, staff communications and updates.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll start with Celinda on that side.
Good evening, everyone, council members and mayor. We have a new employee starting on the 12th, so we're very excited about that. And that will help us fill the clerk position. We're currently working on finding an auditor, that whole process. And we have a couple good candidates that we have received packets from. We're investigating all of them now. What else are we doing? And we're continuing on with our general ledger cleanup and getting all that ready, prior year getting ready to go to the auditor. And that's it for me.
Nothing to report from the police department.
Good evening, councilors. Real quickly on the consent calendar, we did push through the Kerrigan Lift Station project and the pavement restoration project for 2024. We don't have a whole lot of pictures, but we are, like we had said before, wanting to do a few before and after shots. So here on the pavement restoration are a few of the condition before pictures of the pavements of some of the cracks and some of the fading of the asphalt on top. And you will hear shortly see what it looks like when it's crack sealed. So these are the crack seals that are filled into the cracks. This is the process that we do prior to micro sealing. So as you see here, this is what the crew goes out, fills in the cracks. Here's on McHenry Avenue where we've had a lot of the potholing. This one here is more than just filling in cracks, obviously here. This was a little bit more work on this one. And then afterwards, once the cracks, this is our micro seal. Goes through over those streets that have been crack sealed, and then obviously every street gets a new thermoplastic when it's put on there. It turns out great. I was very pleased how the project went this year. Henry definitely looks better. The next project would be Kerrigan Lift Station. And again, a few of the pictures, it's kind of hard. It's a sewer lift station. A few before, the biggest improvements we had on this lift station was as you can see on the sidewalk there, that metal gate there is what opened up and you crawl down into to work on the sewer equipment underneath the sidewalk. And as the pictures will move forward, the white lines you see in the street is the excavation part of where they actually dug up First Street. One of the reasons why we had to have it shut down for the amount of time we did there. Next picture, please. This is what the old sewer pump station looked like. As you kind of look in there, you've got different types of pumps, you've got all kinds of different things. One of the reasons why we had to do a project because things are outdated. And now with the during construction, we don't have a whole lot of photos. This picture here is hard to see, but this is about a 28-foot hole, putting everything into the street into that barrel. In that barrel, we have put in new submersible pumps, which in our term means the pumps go underwater and we're able to pick them up through chains on top and work on them on top. One guy can do it, and it's not a big safety concern. And they're readily available, and we're making all of our lift stations like that. So one pump will be able to go to others. And then the after pictures again, you could see there the two gates that are in the street. That's where the lift station did get put and got taken out of the sidewalk. We tried to get this job fitted in during the micro seal. Fortunately, we were just a week or two late there, so we will get that addressed, but we were able to do a little bit of improvements there. Again, that project went fairly smooth and been very helpful for us since it's been completed. And that's all Public Works has for this evening.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Justin,
Yes, sir.
what's the average life of micro sealing?
You know, it really depends on the travel. It depends on, but we just like to go with a 7 to 10 year average is kind of what we use here. But it really all depends on the traffic, how much is going on there, if it's truck or vehicle. But here it's a 7 to 10. You really should see a life expectancy on that.
And then at what point is a decision made if micro sealing won't work versus just doing a whole new pavement overlay?
We have a little index that we use that we rate the road depending on how many cracks are in there, the depths of the cracks, the depth of the asphalt itself. Because sometimes you're right, you're not able to go crack seal or micro seal. You have to literally take up the asphalt. For instance, kind of the project we're doing on Valdepina right now that's going very well. That road condition was beyond the point of crack seal and micro seal because it's what we call alligatoring, which is like every foot you've got cracks everywhere. So that street, all pavement will be removed and put back new.
And then obviously if we have a major water line or a new repair like that we had behind the Bonnies, then that would just be a whole new repavement?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that just goes back into bringing the soil up to its current condition and putting back asphalt, correct.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anything for us tonight? Mr. French?
Just a few things. You will notice that the minutes are much longer than they've been in the past. We went to kind of a verbatim minute almost due to the subject topics, really. We wanted to make sure that these community conversations got captured fully. So that is why these minutes are like that. And I do want to apologize for the misspelling of Mayor Pro Tem Hagan's name in a couple instances. But as Celinda mentioned, we do have a new city clerk coming on board. Her name is Michelle Bates. She'll be starting with us on November 12th, prior to the next city council meeting. I do want to extend a special thank you to Diana, who has filled in more than admirably in the absence of Jenny and in the time that we get a new city clerk. And that is all I have for today.
Great. Then we'll go ahead and move on to San Joaquin County Commission on Aging, Ms. Sandoval.
Everyone. We've wrapped up most of our year. I want to say thank you, Chief, for coming out and talking to our seniors. They have asked that maybe after sometime in the new year, we do that again. And expand it so that more seniors can attend. He did a scam prevention, and a lot of seniors were surprised to find out some of the info on the scams in Escalon that our seniors have fallen for. We completed another computer from Il Concilio for seniors class. We're hoping to bring them back in the spring, as well as we call it the Department of Center for Justice out of San Joaquin County. We are planning to go into the next phase of senior support services for the 2025 year. This case, what happens is in Escalon, we do not have volunteers who are certified by the county to provide certain resource and referrals here, anywhere in the rural areas, actually. So if our seniors need anything, they're either hooking up with someone out of Manteca or going to their senior center or having to go to Stockton, et cetera. The county does offer certifications in a variety of areas of senior support services for volunteers to hold, so that instead of having to go to Stockton or Manteca or whatever, when they need everything from a Medi-Cal or a Medicare specialist, retirement specialist, Department of Aging Services specialist, or any kind of service like that, they have programs where right in their own communities. And these are all volunteer-based. This isn't like, you're hiring the county and giving county social workers time here, but they are certified to provide that outreach for the county. And hopefully our seniors don't have to try to figure out how to get to Stockton, for example. That has been a big barrier when you talk to the seniors. Nobody wants to go to Stockton, okay? And nobody wants to go to the social services or the different departments or run around all over Stockton trying to figure out what department might help them. So the idea is to bring those volunteers here, obviously local people certified to help our local seniors in providing those services. Obviously, if they need beyond the resource and referral and the basic info, they still have to go to Stockton, or nowadays just do it all online. And some of those volunteers would be trained to help walk them through those processes online. So that's kind of the next phase of where we're going for 2025. We will be continuing our Lunch and Learns, which is just where these agencies come out and do their presentations like we've been having for the last so many months. And we're going to expand to more services, especially as we pass through election, and that is no longer going to be an issue for the state of California or national or anything like that, and there's no one trying to pander to our seniors. We'll be bringing in a lot more agencies to come and speak to them, and then, like I said, hopefully setting up a social services support network for our seniors here in Escalon and Farmington, and our kind of those that are kind of attached to the hip through the school with us anyways. So there is a lot more. It's about to get bigger. So any questions on anything we're doing or planning or?
Like what I'm hearing.
Okay.
I just say keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Appreciate that. Next up, we have matters presented from the audience. The public may address the city council on any item that is on the agenda at the time the item is called. The public may also address the city council on any item not on the agenda that is within the subject matter of the city of Escalon. Each speaker is limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Unused time may not be yielded to another speaker. You may state your name and address for the record, however, it is not required. Due to state law, action will not be taken on an item that is not on the agenda, and except for brief responses, the council is prohibited from discussing any item not on the agenda. If it requires action, it will be referred to staff and/or placed on a future agenda. The determination of whether an item is within the subject matter of the city is a discretionary decision made by the mayor. At that, we go ahead and open up the podium for anybody who would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda currently.
Seeing none. Thank you, Mayor, Council. At our last meeting, we had gone over the IS for the surface water installation, and you all reviewed that. It passed 5-0. And thank you for that. One of the disconcerting points of it was Councilman Engel said he would be voting for it, but he was not in a position to vote for any kind of surface water connection going forward. He cited that he hadn't received any information from South San Joaquin Irrigation District as to what our commitment is to that project. And that stemmed from just a lack of knowledge, a lack of history. This goes back to the city of 1995 when the surface water plant was proposed and participants were asked to participate, and Escalon willfully and acknowledged wanted to be part of that program. So tonight I'm going to hand you that city council agenda item. I realize you guys don't have a lot of time to go looking into history and stuff, but before you start making decisions that have already been decided upon by smarter people than y'all from previous councils, and I don't mean to be, inflicting any damage there, but when you say things like you do and you intonate that you're not going forward, you're thumbing your nose at all of the work that people have done, both administratively and council-wise, going forward from almost 30 years ago. You can see by this report that a lot of information is just kind of brought together, and it was approved on that particular night that we would go ahead and take out a loan for $1.435 million to be part of that process for the surface water. We pay a monthly rate, a small monthly rate for the insurance of that plant. We do it every month. We pass 218 proposals that all of us here pay for in our city water bills. And we're all looking forward to, at some point, having that surface water attached to the city. That's pure water, already treated, not really subject to any current state or local requirements that are affecting our wells that are going to really affect us in the future when they start lowering the limits of what we can put in our water. So I would take this moment to ask you to read this. Hopefully it spurs some questions. You can look a little further. But if you haven't read any of the water studies and the reasons that they were having, I suggest you start looking there before you start making statements that you're not going to approve anything going forward on that surface water. There's only a couple of items in this city that I really am passionate about, and that's one of them. That's a real boon to this city going forward. Originally, I think people were against it because, they came out with their pitchforks and torches and thought this is going to raise the amount of population in Escalon. If we supply more water, we'll have more homes. That's not the point. The point is to have a surface water guaranteed that has water available to us that meets all of our needs, whether we have a well or we don't. And in conjunction with those wells, as we blend it, as proposed, we still have water we can sell to Tracy. And if you go through there, you'll see the Tracy agreement. how it was put together and what it started out at. Somebody said, has the race ever been increased? Read and you'll see. Again, please, do your homework. Think about these projects, big projects that go forward. Ask questions. You got really good staff here. They haven't been around for all of this. I just handed it to Jalen tonight. He tried to explain it at the last meeting. This is what he was trying to explain to you. So thank you. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Chief Hargrave for his little blurb in Escalon residents for Measure P. I appreciate that. Somebody got out there and is pushing forward. I support it, as I always have. And I think it's very important to this city going forward for our budgets. You know, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about the city going forward long after I'm gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to come to the podium tonight?
I wasn't even going to mention this, but I was, sorry, Gabriela Vargas, good evening, council. I understand your passion, Kurt, but that, in my opinion, was completely uncalled for. Councilmember Engel's almost exact words that he needed further information and acknowledged, and said he would be willing to support parts of the process, but he needed specific items addressed, and I think anybody who's doing their due diligence should do the research, and possibly we could be educated on the things that we're not privy to or aware of, like yourself. Education is...
Ms. Vargas, just remind you to, just keep your comments to the,
okay.
to the
Sorry,
council.
I didn't want to be disrespectful.
No, I understand.
You know. In terms of my own things tonight, I appreciate the police department providing an award. I think that that is something that our officers and our city staff could use. Wondering why it took 2 years for that to happen. That's saying you're heroic, but we're not going to acknowledge you for 2 years. Just raises some eyebrows. Animal control, I would like to thank. There have been some deceased cats from the feral cat population that they're dealing with that neighbors are appreciative of. In terms of the awareness months, may I ask who is coming up with these proclamations? Are they discussed on the agenda? And what are we deciding we're going to be aware of? And where can we find the list of what we've already approved? This seems to be, I've seen it in the last 2 months. I don't know if something exists elsewhere that the website is kind of hard to navigate. Is that somewhere we can, something we could find, or that I could find? Okay. And the last is the residents, Escalon residents page. I think that we have tried to be do our due diligence in posting Measure P and resources for the elderly and whatnot, and we encourage people to use this page to get information out. It is in a bit of a transition right now, so I just want the community to know that if they can just bear with us while we make some changes, we would appreciate it greatly.
Anybody else here tonight in chambers? All right, was there anybody online that had any comments tonight? Nobody raising hands? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close matters presented from the audience and move on to administrative matters. Item number 7, set the Recreation Commission application interviews.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you, relatively straightforward item. We do have 3 seats on the Recreation Commission that are set to expire this month. We have gone out for a recruitment or an open call for interested commissioners. That started on September 25th and closed on October 24th. That period is now passed. We did receive 4 candidates. So since there are more candidates than the open seats, our policy calls for interviews. Our policy also calls for the council to set that interview date. So the item before you is to set a date. You can, of course, select a date for a next council meeting. It can be prior to a council meeting, time-wise. You can be an off day. These will be open to the public. So you have some broad discretion in that, but that's the item before you.
When do the term of the current members of the rec commission, when does that term expire officially?
November.
In November, okay. So we need to get this rolling then, okay.
At the end of November, or is there?
It doesn't really specify, it's sort of November.
How much time do you think we need?
Hour 45 minutes, you think? No more than that?
Just do it before a meeting? Or?
I wouldn't have a problem doing it like the next meeting on the 18th.
Don't we normally do them during the council meeting?
Yeah, it depends on what the agenda looks like, if we need to move it forward, so we're not here till 11 o'clock at night. If we move it up a half an hour to 6:30, possibly to do those first before the meeting? What's our thoughts on that?
It seems
Get on
fair.
board. I'm good with that.
Everybody's good with that?
Yep.
So was that the 18th then, the next meeting, if we can plan accordingly for the 4 candidates? I guess the other question would be availability of those 4. If we've got availability from those folks to make sure they can make that date. Because we need to move that forward.
6:30 too?
I'm thinking 6:30, so we can,
6:30.
you need a motion on that or
Does that
just
work for
consensus on that?
Yeah, that works for staff. It's not a normal process to ask the applicants necessarily. I'm not saying we couldn't or shouldn't. But, when we set a date, it's the expectation that
Okay.
they make themselves.
Let's roll a 6:30 on the 18th if we're in consensus with that, unless you need a motion.
I just want to make a request, Mr. French. So the last time the appointments were open, the applicants were just contacted via email, and some of the applicants weren't aware because the email went into their spam folders. And so for these 4, can we please follow up via email and phone call and get confirmation from them that they're available?
Yes. And yes, we do need a motion here.
I'll make a motion for November 18th, 6:30 PM to interview the applicants for the recreation seats.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Next up, item number 8, consider the contract with Todd Davis to provide coaching clinics and support and skill clinics for the Escalon Rec Baseball Softball League per the agenda item request from Mayor Pro Tem Hagan and Walker. Who's got this one?
I have this one. Todd Davis is not here. He did mention he had a baseball game at 5:30. I might advise, as we have many people in the audience for the next item, to maybe move that item up and switch with the baseball item.
That's not a problem with me. We can do that. Then we'll go ahead and move on to item 9. Consider the proposals from Easy Wave and Araya for installation and managed operation of wireless network internet services, backbone request.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Again, the item before you is to consider the 2 submitted proposals for what we call the installation and managed operations of wireless network internet services backbone RFP. Mouthful, but really it's about providing better internet to City Hall and remote sites. We are considering the 2 proposals which council directed at a prior meeting in September to explore further. And if we select a preferred vendor to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement, we do not have the terms negotiated at this point. This is about selecting one of the 2 that council would prefer to move forward with, and then staff can get into the negotiations specifically with that vendor, and then we'd bring a finalized contract before the council for your approval. So just to reset, the city historically has maintained internet to its remote sites via point-to-point links. Those have been our infrastructure. these links are nearing their useful life and are not strong or fast enough for the city's needs. So over the last several years, many cities have turned to ISPs, internet service providers, to provide this service or these links to ensure long-term maintenance and replacement of these links and overall service quality. So instead of us maintaining, work with a provider to maintain with the thought that they would be renewed, refreshed, updated periodically. So in 2023, the city released an RFP to seek improved internet connections for remote sites. We did receive 2 proposals at that time. Ultimately, there were some expressed concerns from the proposers or proposer about the process, about the RFP. And so council directed staff to retain a consultant, prepare a revised RFP, and, kind of go back through the process. So in April, excuse me. In April 2024, working with a consultant, we did release a new RFP with stated objectives to improve internet service and access, enhance connectivity, promote economic development, support municipal services, and ensure compliance with all state and federal regulations. The city received 10 proposals from that RFP across 5 categories. At the September 16th meeting, the council decided to explore one of those 5 options, the no upfront cost and the no monthly cost option, which included 2 proposals from the individuals or the companies you have before you tonight, EasyWave and Iera. Since council direction, staff has met with each proposer to review the details of their proposal. So I can walk through staff's understanding of those proposals. We do have both companies here in attendance to be able to further answer any questions that the council has or provide an overview, as well as our consultant, John and Robert, are in the audience to be able to answer questions. So EasyWave is proposing fiber line with up to 10 gig of speed, which is 20 times what the city sought, as well as wireless options with also 10 gigs of speed in a non-line of sight technology. At the time that we met, EasyWave was not interested in a revenue share model and indicated they would be more interested in a lease agreement for the vertical asset space at the PD's tower with a proposed initial lease rate of $800 per month. Iera, on the other hand, is proposing up to 5 gigs of speed, again, 10 times what the city asked, in symmetrical wireless, so upload speeds and download speeds are the same, for City Hall, plus 6 remote sites using line of sight technology. They also offer a private layer 2 connectivity between all sites, so in between the city sites, there's kind of this private network, and enhance redundancy at their data center. They have connections to where internet goes beyond the local provider. Iera was willing to offer up to 15% or 15% revenue share agreement. So that is staff's report at this time. We can open up to staff questions or consultant questions or both.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Please.
Mr. French, at the beginning of your background statement, you stated that we don't yet have terms. Now, I see some on page 71 of 76. At the top there, I see that there's some loose outlined terms. I just don't understand how we could be asked to make a decision without definitive terms.
We do not have final terms. The process thus far has been to narrow it down. So you do have, as you mentioned on page 71, you do have initial terms that were presented by each vendor. The way these processes typically work is once someone is selected, we can get into final negotiations. That's, I would say, a typical process.
So that would be brought back to council to approve?
That would be brought back to council to approve.
So the recommendation, shows, let me get back there, I'm sorry. Authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with the selected vendor. So you would just be formalizing an agreement based on what we talk about tonight, and then it would be represented to us, and then we would get to choose whether we wanted to move forward with that or not.
Correct. And perhaps, thank you, perhaps execute is not the correct term there. Appreciate that call out.
Questions for either the consultants or our two applicants here tonight?
I just wanted to ask the consultant thing, John, right?
Evening.
Evening, John. I don't want to put you in the hot seat, but in your opinion, you're a professional at this. What do you think is in our best interest?
The one that's not on the list? The fact is that there's differences between the technologies, and it's basically what the right fit is for the city. And I would say that asking the questions for the understanding, as we've gone through a few of the exercises, that it is probably likely as much financial as it is technological. And so there is a case to be made for probably either one of the two applicants. There is obviously, I guess, a disparity between revenue share and no revenue share. So, I mean, that's something to consider. The technologies will probably evolve and change over time regardless. And so the needs of the city specifically, I think either applicant could provide. What the futures are with either one of those companies is probably something to consider as well. I would look at it from a business stability standpoint and technology evolution standpoint with some kind of a more structured focus on what could the city evolve off of those services. So one of the things about municipal services, for example, would be, can you guys have field services, if you will, with public works and whatnot, and be connected in terms of executing for time efficiency, for doing things for effective electronic work order, those type of things. I see a future of not just the connectivity and solution you have today, but can you actually expand and operate efficient business tomorrow?
Thank you.
I have a question, John. So, based off of all of the city's resources, the wastewater treatment plant, public works yard, city hall, PD, is there much difference with technology, whether it's line of sight versus non-line of sight? Also upgrading the SCADA system, et cetera, et cetera.
And there are certainly differences. Again, I would challenge that they are differences. So there are kind of what's the right tool for the job, meaning that often in technologies like this and in providers, there tend to be multiple technologies involved. So for example, a company that may provide line of sight service today may end up going into multiple solutions and technologies in the future. Having core infrastructure is one of the foundational pieces. It's just like laying concrete foundation for a house and then basically building on that. So if you have an effective infrastructure to start, and then your technologies are line of sight or non-line of sight, is there cases to be made that you need additional tools in the future? A simple example would be back to municipal services. We've kind of talked about this in previous discussions about the concept of having a mesh or a dome or signal basically over the city that affords you guys to have the ability to kind of be in a private wireless network, if you will, so that way you can operate amongst whatever city limits or beyond city limits that you need to work day to day. And these initial technologies going in, either one of them can afford you that. It's just implementations. So for example, non-line of sight would be a lot of like microsites or lots of little devices everywhere, more or less. Whereas line of sight may be bigger devices, larger towers, and fewer locations, but more signal, et cetera. And so it doesn't dismiss that either provider could implement, you know, the counterpart to the technology they're using today. So I would say it's today versus tomorrow perspective still, in terms of, you know, what do we have today for our needs? I think both providers can meet that. What you guys want to do for tomorrow, it's can the providers build on top of that and expand on that in ways that are maybe not imposing to the city. For example, microsites can tend to be on lots of, you know, places like power poles or light poles or, you know, lots of locations all over. Is that the city's preference in terms of having all that technology everywhere? Do you have towers or you know, vertical assets in terms of, you have poles and masts and things throughout the city? Do you have a combination? Inherently, wireless technology is going to require some element of that, and just maybe a percentage one way or the other, depending on the provider solution. And so the scalability of either is possible, but it is something where I know you guys have had concerns previously about, you know, the presence of towers. There's been discussions about the aesthetics of towers, and so it's probably just not a right or wrong. It's just, what is the city's interest financially? What's the city's interest in future? What is the city's interest in terms of provider service, SLAs, things like that? My perspective on it would probably be, you know, what is the deliverable on, I guess, the customer service SLA in terms of restorations, resolutions, upgrades, those kind of things, because that's what you'll experience getting service and getting it handled, as well as if there is any option where these providers are going to sell to the customer, where does the city want to stand with that, if there's any alignment or representation of providers associated with the city as well. So I just still don't think the technology is as much as the focus as the overall deliverable.
Real quick, John, you just touched on it, but two different proposals and what it would end up looking like, big versus few, small versus many. Can you walk through kind of what that looks like for each proposer?
Essentially, with the line of sight technology, for example, you guys have the police department tower now, and you have antennas with the SCADA system. You have antennas that are shooting to the water treatment, you know, facility and whatnot. That would effectively remain, and you would probably have similar numbers of antennas and things on that particular tower. You would then also have, if there's other regionalized towers, if you will, to have it where you have the ability to service other areas, those vertical assets and towers would go in certain places. Probably a combination of existing vertical assets that are there now, potentially considering other sites and locations and expansion. I could give you an example of what you would see today if you went into Modesto. There are certain sites that have microsite technology, and some of it aesthetically you can't see. Then you have the flip side of like a 4G or 5G service with a tower that looks like a tree. Have you ever seen those when you're driving around? And then it just comes down to the performance of the technologies. It just requires n number of pieces of equipment, basically, to accomplish similar results. I don't think there really is, it's probably getting in the weeds about like what would top out the other. Like if one goes 200 miles an hour, does the other one go 220? I don't think that that type of bandwidth issue is going to be something that would not be in front, or, you know, the provider would be ahead of that typically. And it's just it's partially technology, partially aesthetics, and partially performances depending on priority of sites and locations. I don't think either solution would come in and do things like, for example, a major provider that would basically already have equipment and towers and whatnot to just blanket and canvas, you know, an area that already surrounds the entire city. So between these two, it's just, you know, what do they build out today versus what they build out tomorrow? And what are the needs for the public versus necessarily the city needs? And I keep kind of focused on public works because I see that as a way basically to get you guys really significant benefit in the operational side of it, was, you know, really smooth operations.
Really confused yet? Yes, please.
I haven't
Answer
gotten to
this.
the tech part yet. so.
I know.
This is more for Public Works and Chief, since you guys would most likely be using them, the benefits of this. Do you have any input on this? Do you have any thoughts on this? Or do you feel like whatever we decide you're good with?
So our MDTs run off of cellular, and because we go to the jail and we operate outside of the city limits, we can't necessarily run off of this system, so we won't necessarily be able to transition off of FirstNet for our MDTs with either.
And to be honest, I've only kind of deal with the fire department who kind of goes through our area, which we have the library. I've had to call it a few times. I've had good rapport with our area. They show up when they need to. Fire department has had good rapport with them. I mean, I think either which way you go, but honestly, I can only give you comments on our area, and for what I know, they've been terrific for others.
Thanks.
Do we have the representative from EasyWave here?
Evening, Mayor and Council, thank you.
Hi, I'm sorry, what was your name?
My name's Scott Vanderson.
Scott, nice to meet you, Scott. Hey, question for you. Do we have page 71 up, or can we put page 71 up, or give Scott a copy?
Yep, 1 second.
The last sentence of that first paragraph, the revenue generated through a potential revenue share model would be dependent on the number of accounts activated via the partnership. The city would maintain 15% of the gross revenue from all new accounts. So is that to be understood that
That's right.
there's 0% of gross revenue from all existing accounts?
All right, this is the first time I've seen
Oh,
this.
I'm
I think we
sorry.
might have a mix-up here.
I'm sorry. EasyWave, the city's current.
This looks maybe like a summary of
Okay.
both proposals
Yeah,
together.
so in that two sentences before that, it didn't clarify. EasyWave proposes the city's current lease, I'm looking here, the revenue generated through the revenue share, okay. Yes, I see that one right there. Okay, so Scott, I apologize, then.
No worries.
Do we have IARA here?
Yeah, but to answer that question, yeah, it would be, the way it was initially proposed is 0% of all
0% of existing, okay. So I have questions for IARA, I apologize.
While you're up there, please stay there. If you don't mind, Scott, I've got a couple questions while you're up there. If you could stay up there real quick.
Sure.
So we don't have you guys go back and forth a bunch.
Yeah, sure.
What's your process for response when, we'll just say the network goes down for one of our departments or whether, what's their avenue for getting with you for service? What's your after hours look like? And what's your, guaranteed response time should we have an issue?
Yeah, great question. We did address that issue on our initial proposal. We provided contact information 24/7 for our top team members, including myself, our network administrator, and our network engineer as well. We do, even within the audience here today, have our network engineer. He lives here locally in town. Obviously, our office is just around the corner, so anything that would come up, not only do we live here in the city where the issue would be, but we're just around the corner, and we're 24/7.
And is there redundant backups to your towers if your tower goes down, has a problem?
Yeah,
How does that
absolutely.
look?
And I just, a point of clarification about our proposal is that it offers, and thank you for bringing that up, it offers a direct fiber connection here to the PD tower. That would be your primary source of internet. And then there's an entire wireless backup, completely separate path. So if the fiber were to get cut, it's not like both of them go down. And that's an important part because we're not just talking about redundancy. If we have, say, we have multiple, internet paths over here, but they funnel through one common choke point, that's a single point of failure. And I want to really highlight the fact that what the EasyWave solution is proposing here is two completely divergent paths, that one is direct fiber and the other is wireless backup, both 10 gigabits. So that would be twice the speed that IARA is offering.
Okay. Any other questions for EasyWave while they're up? All right, we'll probably might come up with other things, but thank you.
Thanks. Do I have an opportunity to volunteer some other information, clarification on issues that have already been stated, or should I save that for later?
Let's save that for later and get
Got
our
it.
questions out of the way first, I think. Councilman Engel, you had questions for Ira?
I did.
Okay. Ira could come to the podium, please.
Council?
It's Matt?
Matt, yes.
So Matt, that sounds like Mr. French answered the question about a 0% revenue share for existing customers. So then my next question would be, what is your, 5 to 10 year share expectation, and what would Ira be doing to grow their market share here? So we have some ability to estimate generated revenue.
It is hard to estimate that, but as we penetrate the market better, leveraging the additional towers, we typically have 60 to 100, maybe even 200 customers per vertical asset is typically what we find. It's obviously higher in more dense areas or more residential areas, for example. So yes, our proposal would be, we'd obviously negotiate, but we would want to do a revenue share for the existing, the additional towers that we would leverage with the city, vertical assets, including this up to the 6 that we would initially serve, as well as remote stations such as pump stations and that kind of thing that might be able to reach additional further points.
What's your current, we'll call it sphere of influence around the greater Escalon area that would be included for that revenue share for expanded business you may gain from those vertical assets you put up for us?
The initial discussion was just the revenue share off the new towers. We could talk about additional customers off of our existing towers around the area.
So
not opposed to that.
Under your current business model in a market similar to ours, how many customers are you gaining per year?
$1,200 to $1,800, I would say.
Do you have any idea how many customers you have currently within the city of Escalon?
I do not have that information.
And then the average cost to the end user?
Our high-speed plans start at $49 up to $69 for residential, and then slightly higher for businesses.
Was there somebody in here that's really good at math, maybe over here, that could tell us what that number looks like?
Well, you get 1,200 at 60. That's a pretty good number, but if you're looking at rent versus 15% of a new, that's what you're looking at here on this page.
Yeah, I'm curious what revenue looks like to kind of weigh the two out, if there's a pro or a con.
It's about the same. You're looking at about 8,000 versus 6,800 on the low end. And we'd have to see how many new accounts there actually were versus a rent. So if you're looking at a flat amount versus, you probably could have the possibility to get more business depending on that 15% versus the rental, we'd have to see. It just depends on how many people are willing to switch from whatever provider they're using now, or people that don't have service that get new service.
Then maybe I just didn't understand the answer to Mayor Bellinger's question. So the vertical assets that you would be utilizing have essentially a sphere of use, and that reaches just to the exterior of the city limits of Escalon, or does that stray into other cities nearby?
It would be any customer served by that vertical asset, whether they're in the city or not. So the outskirts of the area, those would be included, obviously.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Just a clarification. So it's, it's new accounts on new vertical assets, is that correct?
Correct.
Would it also be new accounts on existing vertical assets?
We did not discuss that, no.
Okay.
I don't think that was on the table.
So new accounts on new vertical assets, and then I'm sorry, I might have missed it. How many vertical assets are you employing now?
Within Escalon and the surrounding area, we probably.
Well, in Escalon. I don't need like Modesto and that,
We have 3 or 4.
3 or 4?
Yes.
And then how much, are we just talking about the police station as the additional, or are we?
Station, I think there were 6 additional potential
6 additional.
sites
Okay.
that we would also repeat from, as well as a dozen or more, a couple dozen pump stations.
Okay.
Basically, there's no fixed amount. If the city has an asset and it makes sense for us to be on there, both to serve the city as well as to serve the community, we're open to leveraging that.
I just want to make clear, from staff standpoint, I think the thought expectation was new customers from new technology. So when we talk about vertical assets, what we expected was any new customer that was gained from this contract with, technology that they put up was how we understood it.
Vertical assets, if you were to put the 6 or 7 like you were talking about, would be spread throughout the town to boost signal in those areas. So in essence, just about any new account in the city of Escalon would be a revenue share opportunity is what we're basically saying?
Yes.
Okay, just to kind of clear that up.
Please, Melinda.
So as it is now, what percentage of Escalon do you have the ability to serve with your current assets? Are you able to serve all of Escalon at the moment?
35%.
Oh, okay.
Because like I said, our antennas are extremely high speed, but they require line of sight.
Right.
So, as we move into different areas, the line of sight becomes available at that point, and we're able to serve them with the high speeds.
Okay, so from right now, you have access to about 35% of Escalon to be customers, and with this new technology, you'll have the ability to serve, 90%?
Yes.
And up? Okay.
That's what we anticipate, yes.
Okay.
We may have discussed this with John in a previous meeting, but if you can refresh my memory on approximate locations and what these vertical assets we keep referring to would look like.
Obviously, you have the big ones like the police department tower. We're on the fire department tower. We've been there for a long time. We try to keep our vertical assets low because we don't want it to be unsightly. We're very cognitive of, not being an eyesores. So many of our repeater sites, is what we call them, are typically small. They might just be rooftop, like at the Marval or on the rooftop. Nobody can really see it. That serves, many dozens of customers from that. That's what we would want to do. We want to do small hops to rooftops, poles that exist, say at the pump stations, the top of, library, that kind of thing, to basically hop and mesh through the city. That's kind of our goal.
So do we have any potential sites? I know you had mentioned Marval. Are in the plan, do we have some areas identified that would be useful?
We identified the 6 that was in the RFP. And then I think there's a couple dozen other like pump station sites, well sites that would serve as well. But again, there may be others that pop up. So, we're willing to, it might be even a light post, for example, that might serve an area that help us get to certain city assets as well as the community, so.
Mr. City Manager, can we refresh our memories on the locations from the RFP? And then while we're doing that, is there an ideal height? So when we're talking about on top of a building or on top of a pole, is there an optimal height for line of sight?
It could be anywhere from 2 feet above the rooftop to maybe 10 feet. So, and, selective placement is pretty important on where on the rooftop it might be, so.
So as far as, aspect from, ground level to the top of, your antenna essentially, are we talking 40 feet, 60 feet?
Or less.
80 feet, less, 20 feet?
Maybe 20 feet or less. In many cases, it will be 5 to 10 feet, so it's pretty not noticeable.
Question on the identified sites that you would recommend that you would look to do. If you were to get to the contract, how soon would all of those locations have those assets in place? Is it like and to make that work for the city, timeline's going to be pretty short, I would imagine. It's not an overtime, you're going to slowly put those 6 or 7 up. You're going to put them up pretty quick?
It's relatively quick. Obviously, some sites may be dependent on others, so there's a sequence that needs to happen to expand. But we have all the equipment in stock. We have warehouses that we stock the equipment, and our typical build times 2 to 4 days per site.
So those sites, the primary site is the PD tower, the secondary sites, the 6 secondary sites, City Hall, wastewater treatment plant, Corp Yard, community center, and the weatherization tower, which is also, or a wastewater treatment plant, right? Shooting range, okay, and then the animal shelter.
Thank you. Questions here at the council for the IERA representative?
When was the last time the IERA network went down within this city?
Probably several years ago when the fire department tower, the old 40-year fire department tower fell over in the storm.
And how long was it down for?
We were able to erect a new one in 4 days and get service restored. So, we're also very focused on redundancy as well. I mean, every one of these sites, the major sites, we propose multiple paths in. So if there's an equipment failure, if there's a power outage at some site or some other problem, flips over and fails back, so that, we would expect very little, if no downtime for the city on these sites.
Answered the question before I was going to ask it. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have another question for Easy Wave.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, so when was the last time Easy Wave went down?
As a whole, I don't know.
Within the city of Escalon?
Yeah, I don't have that data. A few months ago.
And how long was it down for?
Half hour.
That's my only question.
Okay.
Are you open to a revenue share opportunity for your contract?
Yeah, I had shared when I met with Mr. French, I just pointed out that it was like absolutely unheard of in the industry. Been here in Escalon for running wireless internet for over 2 decades. We lease major tower sites from the same companies that AT&T and Sprint and the big providers do. It would be absurd for them to ask for a revenue sharing program because of all the difficulties that you just explored with Mr. Ford. So how do you audit when a new subscriber has been added? And how do you have verification of that? Is it the honor system? It gets, the waters get muddied really quick. And then it proposes a bit of a conflict interest for the city who stands to benefit financially from it and then has an influential position to be maybe recommending services for a private entity. Beyond that, it's something that's dynamic and difficult to judge. As Mr. Ford said, IERA already has existing infrastructure within the city that is exempt from the revenue sharing. So are they more prone to add a new subscriber to existing infrastructure as opposed to new because they'll get 100% of that instead of 85? And these are just some of the reasons off the cuff why revenue sharing is, it's not standard for the industry. Not that we're not open to it, it's just really complex and it seems like there are much better solutions out there, like a direct rent.
Is there a reason you proposed 800 below what speaks to be our current lease agreement for our space?
Yeah, that was just, again, off the cuff. I said that was pretty typical. The last meeting that you had where your consultant, John, was really drawing a distinction between Tier 1 and Tier 2 providers. Tier 1 being like your AT&T, your Sprint, Verizon, these sort of guys, and then Tier 2 being all of us little guys. He emphasized that one of the key differences is the infrastructure. And when you look at the towers, they have this giant generator and this huge, ginormous tower and all of this real estate dedicated for kind of like top-notch performance. Whereas when you look at the tier 2 providers, they got these like, measly by comparison infrastructure. And EasyWave has built their network as a tier 1 provider. So I'll point to, we don't have to go no any further than we are right here in Escalon. If you just look at the tower that EasyWave erected downtown, it's a large monopole. It was previously owned by Verizon Wireless. It is engineered. It has permits. It has proper lighting. It's compliant with OSHA. Everything about it is above board. We went through a long permitting process here, engineering, wind loading, everything with the city to make sure that that tower met every regulatory standard that there is. By comparison, we were just discussing the tower that IERA put equipment on that fell over. It fell over, it damaged 2 vehicles, and then was put up 4 days later without any engineering, without any permits, no inspections. In fact, when IERA first put their equipment on there weren't inspections to verify that the tower was sufficiently strong to support their equipment, which clearly the wind told us that it wasn't. So to get back to your question, how I arrived at 800, that's about what we're paying for large commercial towers already in the area. We know it because our towers are commercially built. They are the tier 1 towers. That's what we have across our entire network. And I had shared with Mr. French that's about the going rent in Stockton, Modesto, Manteca, Oakdale, the areas that we are currently leasing commercial towers.
Other questions?
I have a question for consultant John. You could.
Yes, ma'am.
So he mentioned that the revenue sharing in this meeting, it kind of struck him by surprise because it's kind of unheard of in the industry. I know that it had been brought up privately in discussions getting here. Is this a fairly new practice, or are there other places in the area that are practicing the revenue sharing with cities, or what kind of background do you have on that?
More than I want to admit. So it's called community broadband, kind of the general concept. In tier 1 spaces, for example, I'm sure you guys are familiar with a lot of the sublease services. So you've got like Metro, things like that. They're using Verizon, using AT&T, et cetera. That was kind of paving the way for the figuring out how to get other providers competitive and still use assets. For example, I'm actually involved with a CSED project right now for the 5 counties up in the Motherlode. And they are effectively working on middle mile fiber. We're also working on what are you going to do for last mile solutions for internet, open access fiber to multiple provider opportunities, and then above ground or underground solutions. And so the reality is Sassoon City, for example, I was in a project with them and basically did the community broadband service. Sassoon is their own internet provider. There's plenty of solutions these days to actually track the billing, account start dates, creation dates, those kind of things. There's already legal binding contracts that established between the provider and the subscriber, and then ultimately another agreement between the provider and any other entities or partners, et cetera. All that's well figured out in certain markets, but I would say in secondary or rural markets, it's probably less familiar. For example, I've been in a long-term project with Paul Mitchell and a company called Rocket that he's partnered with, and he's doing quite a bit of this community broadband actually under more or less the kind of a free service, if you will, and then sponsors basically afford that service. And so it's a whole different model altogether, but community broadband in general is the concept. Not anything new, just expanding out into smaller markets. And I could probably go on about 20 examples that we've been involved with that it just depends on the scenario. A lot of smaller cities, towns, they have explored this kind of stuff because it can be, a supporting generating thing depending on, what their growth scale projections look like and things like that. But short answer is not new as a concept, not new as a business model, but maybe newer in terms of small communities and rural areas.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I ask John a question?
Yep.
So give me the top pro and the top con for each of these proposals.
That one's put me on the spot.
Sorry.
Top row of, we'll say, easy wave solution, I guess in my opinion, would probably be the overall, maybe cost and scalability. I don't know if I could split the two. If afforded properly, there are some advantages to microsighting, but again, it's what's the right tool for the job. Lots of arrows in the quiver, and what are you trying to do to hit your target? So there are some benefits in terms of if you're trying to have a lot of resiliency in that respect, but everything comes with pros and cons. The con would be you do have some latency components that are more and more by the revision of technology, whether it's line of sight or non-line of sight, is getting closer and closer by the day. But there's a lot more to manage and maintain as a con. You do have lots and lots of devices and lots of maintenance and effect and those kind of things. So my position on this, if I was to construct or design something myself, would probably be a hybrid. Personally, is I'd probably have a lot of core infrastructure that's line of sight, and then I might have edge infrastructure and pockets and micro pockets and things that are non-line of sight, just depending on circumstance and the environments and the buildings and the maybe trees and shrubbery, those kind of things. It's just you got to kind of employ the technology at the right place at the right time. From I guess an IARA point of view, there's probably equally, if I had to bring like two pieces into one, that there is a lot of, a smaller number of devices with more capability in terms of you can, go bigger with your overall capacities and things like that. And there is some current, it's nominal in some places and not nominal in others, depending on the service being delivered over the tech. That's kind of the challenge. If you're surfing a website, most people wouldn't recognize a lot of the issues. If you had like phone calls or streaming video services, you might see difference in like technologies to some degree. And again, somewhat circumstantial based on the architectures. But in terms of line of sight, there is that fabric or backbone perspective that you can build on, and then the pro would be you could incorporate hybrid architecture. You could have line of sight and add non-line of sight. And so the combination of both, and actually as mentioned by both applicants, having wired infrastructure as your quote unquote first leg of your backbone from the internet to their solutions, fiber kind of is just as the great equalizer, right? Everybody's going to do that. And so there's a lot of moving parts, but one of the things I can say is there's multiple service providers that are attached to IARA that I'm personally aware of, but I'm not necessarily personally aware of all providers, and maybe Scott could speak to that, but I'm not sure how many providers are fabric, so to speak, to the edge or data center, end of things, if you will. I won't go any further than that because I'll probably lose you.
So what's a con on the IARA proposal?
Maybe maybe the nature of having to strategically target certain things in priority. But I think it's just, what I mean by that is we have, for example, the 6, call it vertical assets to start. You then have to find strategic vertical assets, as Matt had stated, to kind of get the deployment rolled out and expanded and whatnot. Whereas, again, it's a pro and con even in itself with that, because there are some benefits to it, but then at the same time, you might be limited to existing vertical assets, and then you have to worry about constructing new vertical assets, just depending on what you do. I mean, both solutions have kind of been addressed where you can go smaller, shorter. You can put equipment in these hybrid configurations. You can put things 2 feet on buildings versus on 65-foot towers, and so it's really something I think that there's a little bit of fluidity in the technology and the solutions, because I think the reality is that any service provider, for that matter, is just trying to get that internet service to the customer, and smaller companies are going to be ambitiously trying to do what they can within the technology means to get things to the customer that make practical sense and profitable sense. So I don't know if it's a discrimination thing about, again, line of sight or non-line of sight. It's just each provider uses one of those technologies primary, but there's no distinguishment between could I add in the other technologies into my environment or my architecture. Either one could do the other's solution in adding non-line of sight to line of sight and vice versa. So it's just tough in tech because it just moves that much, and you can make those many adjustments, and maybe you get a deal with a manufacturer, motivates you to change your technology. But if the service is still being provided at the end to the customer and they're not the wiser, it's really a provider problem, not a customer problem. Thank you.
Let's look at the audience if you're not thoroughly confused or have other questions. I think the audience has an opportunity to ask some questions at this point. If you had questions for either our consultant or one of the 2 providers that are up tonight for this opportunity. Please come onto the podium if you wouldn't mind, if you had a question.
It's really, just so you know, Mayor, the questions need to be directed to the council. You are the legislative body.
Apologies.
If the council wants to refer a question to staff or the consultant, they can, but there shouldn't be back and forth.
Okay.
Not a Q&A.
Sorry.
No problem.
Should I address them or?
Yeah.
Address that,
Address
please.
us, yeah.
Hello, my name's Hawk. I just moved up here from LA back in July. I took several months dealing with Spectrum to get internet transferred up here, and it was a royal pain in the ass, but I finally have it where I want, and it's the same price I'm hearing from both these guys per month for my business. What incentive do I have to even make a change if I already have working service, other than I know money might be going to the city to support local endeavors? Is there any real incentive? I mean, what's going to be the cost to the consumer to set up a new account? Do we have to have new installations in our home? What does this mean for the residents and consumers?
That'd be a fair question to ask. Clarify, I guess.
Clarify that this is for our services,
For our
though.
services,
Like,
yeah.
we're not zeroing in on one company for all consumers in Escalon. So we'll have it available, and that's what we're talking about is increasing availability. It doesn't mean the other companies are not available to consumers. So this is more for city business, and we are going into contract for city business, but then also opening up for the opportunity to increase service to consumers as well, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Okay, great.
Anybody else?
We were, as residents, to decide to switch. What are the constraints? Because I've had one of these companies come to my home and they said they needed like a 20 or 30 foot, I don't know what it is, on my roof because I'm so close to the factory that there's a lot of interference. And so that I was unable to get it essentially because the factory caused too much interference. So is that something that we would have to see, or these additional towers on people's homes that maybe even if they're not closer to the factory. But would homes require additional equipment and cost? Or is this something that through the city's agreement wouldn't reflect back to the homeowner or person using it?
Strictly for the city of Escalon, and, individual homeowners wouldn't be an issue that we're looking at right now as far as what they're going to provide to the city. We're looking at concern with the internet for the city here, not what they would do for individual homeowners. We're not looking to put assets on somebody's rooftop to improve our network. That's one that they're asking to do.
I understand that. My question more so is, what if you're improving for the city's internet, but if you're talking about this profit share, that would be for new residents who sign up for services, correct?
Yes.
So it will have some impact if we decide to change our service?
The city's looking to improve our internet provider service through a provider. There's a mutual benefit for the provider to be able to access residents within the city. And so really what we're looking at here is the front end, not the back end. You're really kind of talking about a back end issue. This would just be another service option that is provided. Just like the others that are out there right now, this is another service option that's being provided.
Okay, I guess my point is how much of this profit sharing could really come to fruition if that it's based on homeowners or renters or whoever wants internet not part of the city to sign up, and we have restrictions that we are not eligible for their services. That.
I believe there's another question in the back.
My name is Christy Anthony. I actually work for EasyWave as well, but I don't understand why the city would look for pennies when they have a dollar, a large dollar amount, the 800 or whatever the amount comes. I mean, that you don't have to worry about telling customers, oh, well, if you go with this company, we get a profit. And to me, that's a conflict. To me, it sounds like a conflict. So I just wanted to make that point is you could have a solid amount that you could count on. You could actually put it in your budget, work it in your budget because you know it's coming in. And then from what I also understand, you would save money on the fiber that you're paying for now. So you would have the fiber already, so there's ways that you can actually count on instead of, well, 10 people canceled this month, so our revenue's less. So how am I going to allocate this to the police department, or how am I going to allocate this to Parks and Rec, or, so that's just my point.
Thank you. At this point, should we have the providers both come up and provide a closing statement of some sort? Is that?
As the chair, I'd recommend putting some kind of closure on this. If you want to provide one person provide closing remarks for each, that's fine. This isn't a jury trial.
Right.
This isn't a debate. This is just, hey, this is your last opportunity to comment, and then you can take it back to the council for deliberation and decision.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was
Can I
thinking.
ask one more question?
Please.
For EasyWave? Yeah. Because I did ask these questions, but I happen to know that they're the satellite, and I know that they're line of sight.
Yeah.
Are you able to, or what's the percentage of Escalon that you're able to provide services for currently as consumers go?
100%, easy.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Yeah, does this segue into the final closing comments while I'm here?
I don't know.
Chair?
You're the boss.
My decision.
That'll be the mayor's decision.
Were there any, that was your only question for?
I think that is my only question, just so I could
Okay.
get the understanding. Yeah.
All right, go ahead and provide a final statement if you would like.
Without trying to get super technical, when John was explaining non-line of sight, he's explaining how the traditional non-line of sight worked, which was kind of a mesh system. The equipment that we use is completely different. It's revolutionary and it's new. Hands down, it's the best stuff on the planet, really. We would be able to provide 100% coverage for all of Escalon City and all the rural areas. In fact, we could do a 10-mile radius with 4 pieces of equipment. That's it. Done deal. No additional sites, not linking this one to this one to this one. The equipment is truly revolutionary. So the non-line of sight that the EasyWave solution proposes, again, is unlike traditional non-line of sight that require these micro pops. We don't need any micro pops. We're not interested in any of the other real estate, vertical real estate. The PD tower alone, 4 pieces of equipment, 10-mile radius. What that allows is every SCADA system that you have within Escalon proper and outskirts as well to come back to the same tower. We're not dependent upon another tower working. We're not dependent upon this link or this link, and it doesn't bring that latency increase that John was referring to before. And that's because it would have to hop from here to here to here. So it's a truly, truly unique product. I really want to underscore that. You asked John what the benefits are, EasyWave, and I would say that that non-line of sight is incredible. Not only is it able to go through obstructions, but we have a windstorm coming up. PG&E has scheduled outages planned for tomorrow just to prevent possible fires because we're going to have some strong winds. When that happens and poles shift, towers move, trees blow, whatever happens, this equipment realigns itself over 200 times a second. So it's truly a robust, remarkable solution that's going to provide phenomenal reliability for the city. And that's what I really want to camp on, is that there is a huge difference between a line-of-sight option and a non-line-of-sight option. The lady who shared here earlier about requiring a huge mast, that's the line-of-sight problem. We don't have that with non-line-of-sight equipment. Another pro that I want to bring up is that if the city is looking to reduce costs, like Christy said, you guys have an existing fiber optic line that you're paying for every month. I think I heard in a budget it was around $1,000 a month or something like that. This will replace that, but it will replace it with a 10 times faster fiber optic connection. I really want to hone in on that. That, as far as I understand, IERA's plan is to bring in a wireless equivalent. So EasyWave is bringing in a hardwire fiber plus a wireless as the backup. And both of those are twice the speed of what IERA is offering. John asked about our data center. We're directly connected to Hurricane Electric in Fremont. It's the second to largest data center in all of California. It's ginormous. Without going into all the geeky details, believe me, it's very well peered, as you would say. And then the last thing I want to bring up is really two-pronged, is part of the objectives of this was to ensure compliance with regulations and code enforcement. I don't know how you can do that working with IERA because their towers are not permitted. I've done a search through the San Joaquin County of their various sites where they have towers on top of structures like a dairy farm, or again, like I brought up, the fire department. There's no permits, there's no engineering. And as someone familiar with the industry, when I look at that, I assure you those towers would not pass a structural engineer licensed in California, wouldn't put their name on it because they're overloaded. That's why it already fell over. The last thing I want to bring up is that aesthetics was something that was a concern. The non-line of sight allows us to mount very low. We don't have all the other extra peripheral stations. And if we do move our services here to the PD tower, we are very open to removing the monopole downtown. And so that would help with aesthetics of the city. With that, I want to offer any final questions from the council or points of clarification from anything that may need additional explanation. Yes, Sean.
How many other municipalities currently use EasyWave system?
Just one, Mountain House.
Okay.
Yeah, EasyWave is a relatively new company that has replaced an Eclipse Velociter. Velociter has been around since 2001. Without the long history, EasyWave has come along with this new technology, this non-line of sight. We are rebuilding the infrastructure from the ground up and acquiring Velociter subscribers. But as such, it's a relatively new company. I think of it as like the Lexus to Toyota. You know, they took everything they learned from over here and polished it, made it better. That's what we're doing now.
So how many municipal subscribers did Velociter have?
We worked with the South San Joaquin Irrigation District and City of Manteca.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
That's it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Matt, if you wouldn't mind coming up.
So I want to be clear here. Our primary focus is line of sight because the line of sight technology we have found far surpasses non-line of sight. It's physics. Basically, if you can actually see the endpoint, the radios can connect with much higher speed using the higher frequencies than you can get with the non-line of sight lower frequencies. I don't want to get too technical, but that's it. We use both. We use both line of sight and non-line of sight. In fact, he's referring to a vendor that we also use for the non-line of sight. We have a smorgasbord of vendors that we use, and we try to put a best-of-breed solution in for our network and the communities we serve. So, you know, we have a data center downtown Modesto. We've had it for many years. In fact, Velociter was actually a customer of ours in our data center for a long time ago. And we have a very good facility that has high capacity, probably 10 times the bandwidth capabilities of most other wireless providers in the area, including EasyWave and Velociter. We also have the most experience. I mean, you'd mentioned how many municipalities. We have dozens of cities, school districts, fire departments, police departments. I think we have most of the rural fire departments in San Joaquin County that rely on this exact service that we will be providing for Escalon. So I want to be clear that we have, you know, a much higher support staff, larger support staff, a much more experience delivering these real-world solutions that we're talking about here. We could both do it. I mean, we both serve the city, we'll both serve the community, and we'll continue serving the city regardless of who's chosen here. But, you know.
Any quick questions?
Do you, any of those municipalities, do you participate in any profit sharing with any other accounts?
We do not. Usually they've elected rent, so we
Okay.
pay rent for it. And again, we're open to either rent or profit sharing for this situation as well.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. There's no other questions?
Good.
Thank you. Question for city staff. I'm going to make a leap and assume that in the negotiations, once one of the providers is chosen tonight, you guys will discuss and finalize an off-ramp situation should we choose 2 years down the road. It's just not working for us. And there's an off-ramp to that. There's going to be something to that that'll come back to us with a contract. I don't want to get into the weeds of that kind of stuff right now, but that'll be discussed as an off-ramp opportunity so that we have a way off and on from one provider to a different one should it not work out for whatever reason.
Staff has begun to give thought to this. You know, there are a lot of ways any decision here could go. Revenue share, lease, vendor, technology, right? There's many ways that this could go, and I think to protect both sides, I think there would be, you know, some off-ramps. We would want to ensure that whoever was selected continue to invest in their company, continue to seek out new customers if there was a revenue share, didn't let their equipment, you know, go. You know, we're sort of continuing on, as well as the technology. Technology is changing extremely quickly. We don't want to get behind one technology and there not to be investment if there's new technology coming up. And then, again, the revenue part of it, you know, we certainly, I don't think anyone wants any sort of buyer's remorse. So, you know, what we know now cannot be what we know in 6 months, a year, 2 years. And so, you know, I think we will work in the ability to adjust. That's fair to both sides, but adjust, you know, as things change and as we learn more.
Do leases for vertical assets, is there a CPI escalator for those kind of rent agreements? Or is it just a flat fee kind of situation, generally speaking?
We would negotiate for one. There should be.
And maybe even, yes, absolutely. I think maybe even what is better is to periodically look at what going rate is. So maybe we could work something into a contract where there's, a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year check-in with maybe a consultant or something that kind of gives us what the going rate is. So we are insured, we're not just CPI increasing it, but we're assured we're sort of at the going rate.
Market rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. French, if the city decides to switch to either one of these companies, would PD still have access to their FirstNet?
Yes, this would not affect FirstNet at all.
What fund will the revenue be deposited into?
General fund.
To that point, that Councilmember Engel mentioned, I see benefits in both. It's hard not to ignore, at a minimum, the over $20,000 of revenue that the city will, either both through the lease and through eliminating the current internet bill, $20,000 a year. $20,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's $20,000.
Councilman, we spent half of that having somebody come out on site to do a repair that should have just been a few $100s because our internet service wasn't sufficient for them to do it remote. So it could even be more than the 20,000.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, council at the last meeting was interested in exploring the revenue share. It was mentioned by at least one of the applicants, or both actually. We can go either way. If council wants to provide direction or leave it to staff, we will negotiate, the best deal possible. Again, fair for both sides. If there's interest in the revenue share model, which in our minds has higher upside, maybe over the longer term, versus, a lease, which maybe has lower upside, but is kind of the sure thing.
If their general cost is about $60 per customer, if my math is correct, you're gonna need 85, 90 customers, new customers, to get to the amount of an $800 lease, just for consideration. That's the number.
85 to 90 on a monthly, new customers a month, or?
Well, once you get the new customer on that site, we're getting the money every month until that customer goes away. It's not just an initial one-time kick. It's a revenue share from that new account. So once you get over 90 or 100, we're making at the 15%.
He mentioned that with the new technology, could be upwards of 1,000, 1,200 customers.
So there's potential there. I was just looking at the very minimum you would have to have, just round it up and call it 100 new customers. How long would it take for them to get 100 customers to go above an $800 sure thing for consideration of if we want safe or a risk for a revenue situation? That's roughly the number I'm seeing for consideration of what we think might happen in the market for consideration of one of these two providers.
All right, somebody's got to pull the Band-Aid off here.
May I, real quick for staff, how long is the contract that how many years was the contract that we are going to be offering?
That's one of the details that has not been finalized. I'm sure with an investment that the applicants will want a longer term. I don't think we would mind a longer term, right? Speaking from staff standpoint, if there were sufficient off-ramps to, protect the city's decision.
No, it's a very minuscule topic, but I can't tell you how many complaints I heard when the large tower went downtown because you can see it anywhere in town, and people are like, who put up that tower? It totally takes away the small-town feel of Escalon. So it's a minor detail, but I have heard complaints about it.
From what I understand, they're not gonna need more towers, correct? Like, the Easy Wave's not going to be
Right,
putting
and
more towers.
as a condition, the Easy Wave said that they would consider taking down that tower.
Okay, well, I appreciate both presentations. I think there's pros and cons to both. On Planning Commission, I actually voted against that tower, so I'd really love to see it go away. However, I do feel that IARA has the experience to service us moving forward, and if I had to choose between the two, I would choose IARA.
Is that a motion?
Nope.
Okay, just asking.
Comment?
Okay, just want to make clear if that was or not.
I can make a motion.
Is there any other comments, concerns, or questions before I ask for a motion, I guess would be the question? At the point, do we have a motion on the table that we would like to present?
Sure.
Anybody?
I will motion to authorize the city manager to generate an agreement.
I'd say negotiate.
Negotiate an agreement with IARA to be our new wireless network internet service.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments before we go to vote? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1 to start the process. All right. It is 8:42, and before we get to the next item on the agenda, I'm going to ask for about a 10-minute break here to use the restroom. Apologies for everybody, but I'm going to use these facilities, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes.
This one, like, one stays up, one doesn't.
All right, everybody, appreciate the patience on the break. We're going to come back to item 8 on the agenda. For those that are still here, item 8. This is to consider the contract with Todd Davis to provide coaching clinics and support and skills clinics for the Escalon Recreation Baseball and Softball League.
All right, Mayor and Council, thank you. This is the continuation of an item of sorts. This item has been through a productive and lengthy, maybe has a negative connotation, but a lengthy public vetting and community discussion. It's occurred over council meetings, rec commission meetings, and community workshops. So just to rehash, the general consensus at the last council meeting on October 21st was to take portions of the concept that was brought before the council, take portions of it initially in this kind of next season, which registration would start here in the next couple of weeks. Season would start after the first of the year. Take portions of it, and really what that means is probably remain in the Oakdale Baseball Softball Association League, so not switch leagues to a different league where perhaps there was more travel, more unknowns. There was discussion in the concept of a future board who would help either city staff or some sort of administrator to answer parent concerns, questions, help with scheduling, that type of thing. That board would likely not be established prior to this season, but somehow or sometime during the season. For the program overall to be managed or oversight in some manner by the city, as well as the consultant, Todd Davis, handle certain elements of the proposed program. So when you look at what the contractor consultant would do, Todd Davis, for a fee, right, host skills clinics for athletes in baseball and softball, host coaches clinics and provide coach support and coach packets, be the one really in control of the season scheduling and any rescheduling, so any makeup games, rain delays, those types of things, to assist with the evaluation and draft process, and act as a city representative liaison to OBSA, sort of on behalf of the city. So you will see in the staff report, there is a chart, a table that has 3 different categories. There was some discussion on if the costs could be itemized. They were not specifically itemized. In a contract like this, it was explained to me, there's a general handling of matters, and each aspect doesn't relate to an hour or a dollar figure. It comes with, managing it. But the original cost, which hasn't been reduced in this discussion or in this staff report, was $4,000 per month during the season and $3,000 per month before or after the season. And you can see the table is broken up into before season, before the games, and then during season. So if there was a desire of the council to sort of treat this as a menu of things that we wanted to see staff continue to do, things we wanted to see the contractor do, I think we could treat that like a menu and then sort of itemize those with help of Todd, who is here and can speak to those issues.
One other thing I don't see listed in these numbers is the fact that these numbers here for Escalon are subsidized numbers. So I think there was some confusion last meeting as to what the actual price would be. as if the subsidization that was currently there was being taken away. So I just want to make sure we could clear that up.
Sure. No cost proposed at this point. I think the council would likely want, if we are going to start registration in a couple of weeks or a month, I think for this year, council would want to put a cost on the program for this year. You are absolutely correct. Baseball in particular is subsidized about $25,000 per season. Baseball, softball is subsidized about $25,000. So across 450 kids, that's about a little less than $50 or a little more than $50 per athlete. So, yeah, it was also mentioned that our fees are lower than other jurisdictions, and that is in the staff report as well, where you see the chart shows the other jurisdictions that are around us, Oakdale, Riverbank, and Ripon in particular, compared to the Escalon fees. You know, again, council can do with those fees as you will. As the program gets established, and there is a board, if that's the direction it goes in, all of the details of the program could be determined. Cost and quality of jerseys, type of referees. Those are your two biggest, right now, those are your two biggest costs, aside from, you know, kind of the staff overhead cost. Those are your two biggest costs, jerseys and refs. So depending on what the council or the board wanted to do with those, that would really determine your overall cost of the program, not mentioning any subsidy, in addition to whatever cost is determined for the consultant contract.
At the current rates, we're subsidizing $25,000. With Mr. Davis's contract, we're looking at $18,000, which is about $40 a kid. I'm not interested on our budget to subsidize that, just to be clear. I think that our rates have to cover that contract at a minimum for an increase. The other concern I've got is I've heard multiple people talk about kids from out of town, outside the sphere of influence of the Unified School District coming into play here. There needs to be a bigger charge for that. If our tax dollars are subsidizing for our kids to play, I'm not interested in subsidizing kids that come from another town. We need to protect that and charge more. I don't know what that looks like, but we can't walk away from it and just ignore it, in my opinion.
So to that point, what's the current rule? As long as they're within the Escalon Unified School District,
It used to be that. I'm not sure when it changed, when we started allowing folks from other towns come in. That I don't know when that change made.
There is no current rule. Anyone who wants to join can join. In the last 3 years, so that's 12 seasons, we've had an average of 22% of the total program from outside of the sort of 95320 area. So Modesto, Manteca, Ripon, those areas. Stockton.
do we know if they come here because it's affordable, or do they come here just to?
Most likely affordable, because it's not the level of play they're going after, most likely.
Well, so I think that comment has a competitive. I think on the other side of that, there are absolutely people we have heard of on the other side who do want to join the Escalon League because it feels more accessible. It's less competitive, less, I don't know, intense. So I think there is absolutely the cost factor, there's the accessibility factor, there's any number of reasons, you know, falling out with a coach or teammates or other things. We've heard numerous reasons over the time here.
May I just add something?
Please.
We do have several children in Escalon Unified School District that are coming in from Riverbank and from Stockton. And a lot of times they do want to play with kids they go to school with. So there's also that factor. There are several kids in Escalon Unified from those outside
I
communities.
would think if they went to school here, that would be all right, but if they're just blindly coming here, you know, that's a problem. We're subsidizing $55 a kid.
Right.
So that's, you know, that's for out-of-towners to come in.
Not really fair to our residents that are paying tax dollars to subsidize a kid coming in from out of town.
Right. So it's 22% out of 450, that's almost 100 kids that we're subsidizing. That's $5,500. We're subsidizing out-of-town kids as opposed to our kids. Is there a mechanism legally that we get in a problem if we want to address out-of-town, out of zip code, depending on how we set that up? Are we allowed to do that?
Yeah, you can set up alternative fee structure for, out of area residents.
Okay.
Well, I think what I look at when I see our league is a situation where we're not giving our kids the best opportunity to succeed. That's the concern I see. I also see no outlet as they get older on the boys' side. In the girls' side, it gets very narrow as well to go compete at a reasonable price. At 12U or older, you're basically having to jump into something that's costing $2,500 to $5,000 a season when this could lead to opportunities that, grant you are there already, but opportunities like Todd is providing, what is it, a couple $100?
Yeah, right now our program's $370 for insurance uniforms and our full league season.
Yeah, so it's night and day as far as that's concerned for that competitive arm. As far as the kids are concerned, by the time they make that decision, if you're not giving them what they need between T-ball and 9-10U, by the time they make the decision to go competitive, they're already way behind the 8-ball, so to speak. And that's the experience I've seen coaching through the league and taking my own son through the league. So I'm very aware of the deficiencies that are there, currently.
Yeah. I have a little bit of a different concern. So currently we're playing with Oakdale and Riverbank, and you'll see Ripon listed as well as in our sphere, and some of our kids are going over to Ripon. And my concern is, those are all run by boards, so Oakdale, Riverbank, and Ripon all have their own boards run by people who are very passionate about the organization and have the ability to put on some improvement programs like the baseball clinics, the softball clinics, the coaching clinic, which we've been attempting to get going here, and it's a slow roll because it's a lot of people just pulling favors instead of somebody who is a professional, does this on a regular basis, and has those resources to pull for our kids, to have those clinics, to have not only that, he has the ability to do the game scheduling. I know that we've been having issues with our game rescheduling, and it's just a regular thing. Instead of somebody, a staff, who's working a 9 to 5, 5 days a week, because that is a job. Some of these jobs are weekend jobs. They're evening jobs. They're jobs where staff isn't necessarily always available by phone. A lot of these are specialty. They're on call. And I feel like this is a great opportunity to have a liaison out there, being able to represent us, and then also pull from resources to be able to have professionals run the baseball clinic, run the softball clinic, have some, one of our biggest things on the softball side is we're behind in pitching. And so now we have the ability to have some professional or school trained, college trained people come out there and actually help our students and help our kids get to where we can compete to even Oakdale. Because right now we're showing up to Oakdale and we're a year behind. And so this is going to pull us up and be able to actually compete at the same level as the communities that we're actually competing with right now at the same level. So right now, that's where I'm at. I want to make sure that we have a good opening day, that we have a good, that we're ready to go and we're excited and not intimidated when we get there. And I feel like this is an opportunity for us. And then we also have right now because we're through Babe Ruth, we do have an all-star team. That has an ability, we're always entered in that Babe Ruth sanctioned tournament at the end of the year with our all-stars. We don't ever go very far, but have that ability to go somewhere because we are Babe Ruth. And hopefully this will give those people a chance to get to the next game. So, in those. So, anyway, I just see this as an opportunity to give our kids at least up to status quo with the towns around us. So when we get to high school, we can compete with Oakdale. We can compete with Riverbank. This is our feeder program. We don't have another feeder program. And instead of taxing staff with so many hours, we're going to have somebody who's actually passionate, knows what they're doing, knows how to respond, and can represent Escalon for us. So that's the opportunity I see for us right now.
One side note to that is we're currently, 150 hours, I think, was what Jalen, you had told me, city manager, sorry. 150 hours of internal staff time that's being put into this. When that staff time, I think, can be used for, things that really are much more important as far as infrastructure and that kind of stuff. When that's where that external board ideally makes a big difference, because it now takes 150 of those, a lot of those hours, maybe not all 150, but quite a few of those hours out of the city. And now we're not getting charged for that over time. So it ends up being a cost savings in the long run once that board is set up. Not to mention, fundraising that can also bring that over time, subsidize that program so that the number we're seeing gets smaller and smaller over time. At the same time, our kids are getting an opportunity to get the fundamentals as they're younger, and then by the time they decide if they want to go somewhere, they're not way behind the other kids at their same age group is the big thing I see. And Escalon's always been a town that we don't subsidize a lot of social programs, but we have always had a precedent as far as our kids.
So I have a question for staff. The 18K for Todd, I'm sorry, were you finished, Mayor Pro Tem? The 18K for Todd is to do skills and coaches clinics, game scheduling, rescheduling, recruitment, and draft, and league rep to OBSA? Or is it everything that's on the chart on page 62?
Everything that's on the chart on 62.
For 18K?
Yeah. So it's $4,000 per month during the season. We figure about a 3-month season, and 1 month before, 1 month after. That's how you get to the 18K. I think there's some room, as was mentioned by Todd last meeting. I think there's some, wiggle room, also dependent on what portions of this the council wants to see staff do versus the consultant.
So to Mayor Pro Tem's point, I'm kind of looking at this through a father's lens. And the goal is to try to help increase the competitive edge, if you will, for our kids. And if I were to take my son to a baseball clinic that Johnny's dad is doing, it's like, yeah, Johnny's dad's doing a baseball clinic over at the community center Sunday at 2 o'clock. My son will go out and try, but I don't think he would try harder than usual. Now, similar to that, if it's presented and advertised in such a way with Todd and his team and these Division 1A athletes, I think that the kids are going to try harder. They're going to want to work harder because now it's not Johnny's dad leading the clinic. It's Todd's program that's leading the clinic, which then would have a direct correlation to the competition and the competitive advantage that we're trying to instill in the kids.
Yeah.
Further to that, I think that, yeah, $18,000 is $18,000. However, as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, the hours that is saving on staff time for that particular position now could result actually in a cost savings, because now that staff member can do other activities that would actually benefit the city and not have to worry about scheduling and rescheduling and rain days and et cetera, et cetera. No offense, Todd, but that's your problem now. So,
The other thing I wanted, not to interrupt you, but to kind of piggyback on is the idea that we're also helping those coaches learn how to coach with this. That leads to, in my opinion, better development of character, helping foster confidence in children. And so it goes on way past the game itself. It goes, in my opinion, into building young men and women with character who then take that further into their development and then at some point come back to town. And I think a lot of that starts on a baseball field, a lot of times, softball field, a lot of times, not for every kid, but for a lot of kids, where they learn, you know, a lot of the valuable things that life throws at you in a way that they're able to kind of be exposed to it, learn it. You know, for example, understanding how to win and lose with character, understanding the idea of competition, you know, fostering a good sportsmanship, all that stuff directly leads to community building in the long run, especially when we get our high school involved in it. I just wanted to piggyback on that.
well, I guess my take on it is that the program is, the city's been doing an okay job managing this for the public for I don't know how many years, but I think bringing someone like Todd in really steps up the game. But
So,
Part of tonight's decision, are we deciding rates as well?
I would.
Because I can't in good conscience go vote for something if we don't have a way of covering this cost, so.
I would
So-
if we plan to have a season under this model.
Okay, just want to make sure we're clear on that aspect. Because I see if we're doing 450 kids, that's about $40 a head more just to cover that contract. I would say that would be the bare minimum we can raise. And then my secondary question about out-of-area kids. They either don't go to school, if they don't go to school here and they don't live in this area, they should be paying more. Whether it's $30 or $50, just to increase that in some form is my opinion on that. But any more discussion here before we open it up to the room?
yes,
We
I
have-
have, yeah, I do.
Please.
Whenever you're ready. So I do have a proposal, kind of, in listening to the community in all of these discussions that we've had leading up to this. I know that there is a want from some community members, and really for myself, to kind of have an introductory season, see how this goes, and go forward with it. And right now, we don't have a board set up. This would be run by the city. So what I would like for discussion to consider would be that the city would retain the items listed on the before season. So they would open up the city website, as we always would have done, and take registration there. They would do the recruitment there. They would do the same sponsorships, the uniform ordering, the advertisement, they've already done the equipment checks and stocks and distribution. So city is already on that. And then they also may be scheduling picture day and doing opening ceremonies. And then in that way, the city retains any money income that's coming in, changing hands, that kind of thing. And then the specialty out of office responsibilities would go to our specialist here. And then he would be doing and we would discuss whether we want the baseball and softball clinic and the coaching clinic before or after evaluations. And then evaluations, the draft, the games, the coordinating umpires, and all of that kind of thing. So that's kind of a proposal that all the in-office, in-house stuff, or at least this first year, is taken care of by staff and our own website that people are used to going to. And that would be what's up for discussion. I'd also like to point out that if we did raise, let's just say it was $20 each, would be about $8,000 if we had the low end of 40 or 400 kids, but it's been more like 450 kids. And if we did, it'd still keep everything under $100 a kid and still be quite low for the comparison, and would cover more of that since Todd wouldn't exactly be active until later months. So that's what I'm proposing for discussion.
Guess that'd be a question for Todd to come up to the podium and.
Oh,
if
before
was
that,
to go away.
may I? I've
Yeah.
tried to stay quiet through the whole thing, and I think I just get my opinion out there really quick. Number one, I'm not a huge fan of subsidy for anything, but I do get that it's for our kids, so I may be a little bit more lenient, but I'm definitely not a fan of subsidizing kids that aren't in Escalon Unified, which if I were to enroll my kids in this program would include myself, because my kids are not students in Escalon Unified.
But you live in Escalon Unified School District zone.
But they're not enrolled, and I think that would be the criteria. If you're going to school here, you should be able to get that subsidy.
Councilmember Engel, you pay taxes.
Let me finish, please. And then, so I still don't believe it would be a competitive league. It's still going to be a rec league. So the increase that we would potentially see that I've heard talked about, I just don't see it. But then again, you know, I don't have a whole lot of skin in the game because my kids aren't currently in that program. So I'm really more interested in what the parents of our community have to say about it. And I'm a bit confused because at the last meeting, it seemed like we were semi-split. There were folks that were in favor of running the program if there wasn't really a major cost increase. But if there was, then they weren't going to be in favor of the program. Please, you know, correct me on that portion if I'm wrong. So even though I don't have a lot of skin in the game, I still think that it's an upgrade to our program and that it's worthwhile. And for the first season, I would definitely be in favor of continuing the subsidy for 1 year for kids that were inside of Escalon Unified. And then after that cost definitely needs to go at least to a tiered increase. I get it, maybe not hitting them all at once, but maybe the first year we cover it, the second year we get half, the third year into the program, if we continue to decide to move forward with that, the cost has to be, you know, taken care of somewhere. And that would be my suggestion.
So what I was saying was that I think that if you're within Escalon Unified School District, whether your children attend Escalon Unified Schools or not, you should have the ability to get the Escalon rate per se.
You could live here, but what about the kids whose parents work here, so they come to school here, or because their grandmother watches them after school because their parents work out of town, so they're here in town? They don't necessarily live here, but they're enrolled in our schools. So if they're wanting to play ball with their friends, that makes sense to me. Let them play ball with their friends.
And I definitely agree with that.
It can be both.
It can be
kids that are going
live or go to school.
Kids that go to Farmington, I mean, they have, or Collegeville, they're within Escalon Unified School District. Would the same opportunity be provided to those students?
Well, if they're enrolled in Escalon Unified, that.
If I could just chime in,
just somebody that does this every day, if you add all the other rec programs in the valley, you're just way so low is kind of put you in this predicament. And I know it's very difficult. The cheapest league out there that I've dealt with is $160. T-ballers typically, it's a sliding scale, are typically cheaper. But as you see, the ones that you've given reference to here are all the same pretty much. But it's just that it's been so long, it's been so cheap, it's made it really hard for you guys, and that's why you've had to subsidize it. It's time to go up whether you hire me or don't. I mean, that's just.
I would agree.
You know, the cost of uniforms have gone up, you know, obviously tariffs and the things that we have to do to get the t-shirts here, right? It's all gone up. So even if you didn't use me, you need to be in that at a minimum of $100. And then to your credit is what you were saying, my kids played soccer here, and I didn't live in Escalon, but their friends did. And we all came here to play soccer together. So I totally understand that side of it as well. If you're gonna do a split, you're gonna subsidize for certain members of Escalon, I would sell it as a discount for people who live here in the district, rather than an increase for the people coming in. It's $165, but if you are part of the Escalon community, now it's $125 or whatever it might be, so, sorry.
With the consideration of Councilman Walker's idea here of pretty much pulling most of the before-season actions here, would that pretty much remove one of your months of charges in one form or another, probably?
It's entirely up to you. I haven't seen your website, so what I would do is, you know, part of that first month, as you said, it needs to stay with the city. You collect the money. I don't want to collect anybody's money. You guys collect the money, you do your deal. But is the sponsorship options, who might want to be a coach, who might want to be an assistant coach, is all of that in the registration already? Those are the kind of things that I would maybe look at that might be missing, which I don't mind being a part of that as well. There's going to be some time in there for me to meet with the coaches during that preseason to find out if we do have enough coaches, how many do we have to go find. So there are some things that either you'll need to take care of with me giving you some direction. Not to say that you don't already have the direction. I don't know. I haven't been involved in that part of it yet. But it's totally entirely up to you.
Yeah. City manager, with looking at the before season and after season costs, what would we be looking at realistically in staff cost? I mean, $3,000 at an hourly rate we're paying to staff plus benefits and perks and everything, that could be achieved pretty quickly. What would you think? I know it's kind of going to be a guesstimate, right? But would we be more or less?
More than 3,000? $30, 100.
4,500. We're talking $150.
Right. Well, that was not just preseason. That's not just preseason.
Pre-intro.
So less, I guess, a little less in terms of staff time, but that's
just a little.
Yeah, but that's not. Just make clear, that's not new cost, right? That's staff who already works here, is already getting paid, is putting in these hours. Now, technically, they could do something else, but.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Could staff do something better with their time?
There's always something else to do.
Todd, I have a question. So when you handle the drafts and the evaluations, how do you avoid a scenario where somebody comes in and they have their entire 12-person team already ready to go and say, okay, this is who I'm drafting, this is my team, I'm moving forward?
So when we work with the county league, we don't allow that to happen. It happened about 15 years ago. My middle son was playing 12U and they brought in a travel ball team. So basically it was cheaper for them to sign up for a rec league to basically use the rec league as their practice for their tournaments. So obviously, for all the reasons that we're trying to do this, we don't want that to be part of this. So we want it to be truly rec league kids. Now, you're always going to have a better one and a worse one, but that's where the draft comes. You try to balance the whole team out together.
So how would you handle that situation?
So for me, it would just be a no. If I can look up any team that plays in our area and see where they play, who they played, and what level they play at, and that would tell me you're not a rec league team, right? I can look up. For example, I played Dirt Devils this evening, right? They have 4 different Dirt Devil teams. We played the red team. I could look up the Dirt Devil red team on Game Changer and see exactly where they played, what tournaments they've been a part of, and if one of those teams shows up for rec league, my recommendation to the council or whoever's going to be in charge, you don't want that in rec, because it just ruins it for the kids that are rec kids. Rec has to stay rec. This is just a place for them to come have a great time. Like you said, they're going to put a little more effort in if it's a little more structured, and you have outsiders that are coming in to do this. That's just going to get them a little more excited about the game. And like to Mayor Pro Temp's point is, at that 11, 12-year-old, they're either going to go do travel or they're going to stay in rec. Rec has to stay rec. So I've never had anybody be upset about that when we explain this is a rec league. This isn't for.
I don't believe we've ever had a team come in and go, here's my 12 players and I'm the coach and this is going to be my team for rec league. That's never happened.
Yeah.
The kids are dumped in with everybody else for a draft and potentially being on 5 different teams.
Right.
Now, so just a information piece though, we do get complaints every year about draft, and teams do get stacked, but it's more because every coach gets their kid on the team, the assistant gets the kid on the team, the manager gets the kid on the team, and the sponsor. So you already have 4, which is your infield, and then we're good to go. And that's really where it gets. And so if staff retains the registration, that's where you're gonna want to clarify things on how draft's going to work, and just make sure that it's posted on the website before we start registering people, that it is clear that who gets to bring a kid and how many kids.
Right.
You know,
And that's
you don't get your 3 kids.
Right, and that's
you know.
where I would want to see the website and maybe just give some advice. We never let more than 2, the head coach, the assistant coach. If there was a carpool situation for a mom that couldn't get a child to a game and they carpool together, those are things that you want to allow, right? But when the draft comes around, each team gets their head coach and their assistant coach, and then it's a pick 2, pick 2, pick 2, pick 2, pick 2, pick 2. That keeps it even. There are some times where coaches will come in, and I have to be honest, I like it sometimes, there's coaches that like to keep kids together, right? I played with the same group of kids from the time I was 6 years old until I got to high school with the same coach. That's kind of a special thing. Doesn't happen very often. And see, this league doesn't allow us for a lot of that, right? Because it's not as structured as the county league. That's why I was offering the county league up, because then it's very structured. If you did something like that and those kids became an A, they've been together since they were 6, of course they're going to play a higher level against kids that are higher level, even though we're still within rec. Right? So I don't want to mix that up. We're still within rec. There's a high level rec, and then there's the daisy pickers we talked about over the last 6 months, right? So, but that's the stuff that I would do in the first month, is look at some of that stuff and how can we make sure that this doesn't get stacked, it stays even.
What we've seen from a staff standpoint is there are many, many, many iterations of the draft scenario, right? And all the other rules that have, been allowed over time that people either take advantage of or don't. So from a city, we haven't been really the heavy hammer. We haven't come down on anyone and said, because we didn't, at least in my interpretation, we didn't feel like that was necessarily our role. If an external board was created, they have a certain closeness to the situation and ability to call people out that will, over time, resolve matters. There's no silver bullet to, the draft situations that occur every year. But what it would be is, someone being able to closely watch it, understand the dynamics and what's happening, and then being able to, sort of call people out on it. So a couple of those factors the city has not had purposely or non-purposely.
And Councilmember Stroman, to your point earlier, it's my problem. That just gives you the scapegoat in that, right?
Well, I didn't mean that in
No,
a
but you're
negative
right.
connotation.
But you're right. I mean, it needs to be somebody who set up a specific set of rules, right, for the city of Escalon, put together by your board, right, by the council, and then I can enforce that, in other words. So they can't come to the board, come to the city office and complain that, little Johnny didn't get to play with his best buddy because his best buddy throws the ball 70 miles an hour at 13 and little Johnny throws the ball 35 miles an hour, right? So it's a safety issue at that point. So it puts the burden onto me in that respect, right?
Any other questions here? And if there's anybody in the council chambers that has questions to address the dais up here on this topic, you're more than welcome to come to the podium and ask those questions.
I'm just incredibly lost. We're talking about financing and then drafting. So do we currently, for let's say my son, he would be 12, would I pay now $75 to get him in our current program? That's a subsidized price?
Currently, that's a subsidized price. That's what they pay now.
Is subsidized only for low income or everybody
Everybody,
that lives here?
it costs the city $25,000 a year to subsidize the Little League Baseball program, girls and boys softball, baseball.
Is there a reason, just curiosity, why it's usually subsidy is like for kids that can't afford it or?
It has nothing to do with if you can afford it or not.
I think they started,
No, but
I think they started it a long time ago as a precedent.
So we're gonna leave the
Way before
subsidy
us.
there regardless?
That's my understanding. I don't know. It depends
That's
on the
the
board.
goal.
Depends on what the board says.
I'm just trying to get clarity. If the subsidy stays there, which is great for parents, what is the price? I mean, it just seems like we're way far away from what other teams are charging or leagues.
Correct. If we go with Mr. Davis's contract, roughly $18,000, we have the right number of kids that we expect of 450, give or take. I would anticipate that we're going to charge $40 a kid more to cover that cost of that contract to every one of those rate numbers. That's my opinion. Then there's a negotiation on whether or not we're going to continue to subsidize next level of folks that don't live in Escalon, but at a bare minimum, we need to cover the cost of that $18,000. It's not in the current budget. We don't have the money for it. So at a minimum, those rates need to be covered, in my opinion.
I completely agree. So then what you're proposing to do for this season is rec program or a hybrid program or the county program?
It's rec. It's rec.
Stay rec.
Yeah, that's rec.
Okay, so you would just add his knowledge and clinics and all these
Everything we've been
services
talking about, yeah, the added services to improve the program, yes.
to the program, you still get a it's very reasonable price. I guess I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything here.
I don't think you are. I think it would basically be $40, like Mayor Dave said, with the exception of, I guess, the decision on the subsidy stuff for, out-of-district kids.
And we're currently playing the Oakdale or we're part of the Oakdale League?
Playing Oakdale?
Both, right?
No, we're playing
But
Oakdale, so
Escalon's its own
we have
league?
our own league, Riverbank has their own league, Oakdale has their own league.
Okay, so we only
But
play
Riverbank
them.
doesn't have enough teams to play each other sufficiently, and we don't have enough teams to play each other sufficiently. So Oakdale, they don't need us, but they allow us and Riverbank to play together. So we all play together, we play in Riverbank, we play in Oakdale, and we play in Escalon against all of those teams.
The
OBSA, Oakdale Baseball
program
Softball
is what our
Association,
rec kids are part of?
playing against.
Oh, playing against.
Playing
We're
against
not
with
part
the
of their
same
league.
set of rules. So we play by their rules, so
Got
we
it.
do have, so we're not a part of their league, we're playing with them on the same set of rules. And just to be, just for extra information, when I was on the Recreation Commission, we had tackled the rates. And about 5 years ago, if I remember correctly, we had decided that, yeah, this does need to incrementally increase, and there was a fear of doing it all at the one time, and then COVID hit. And so we didn't have a season in 2020 or 2021. And so then it just kind of was, we're hoping to get all the kids back in, and the economy kind of hasn't been doing well. So I think it wasn't an active thing. And plus we had some staffing changes that were going on in recreation in the city. So this has been discussed before. It's just the upheaval of COVID happened, and
I understand.
so
There's just
that's
a lot
where
of
this,
bouncing around on each topic. It's hard to follow where we're at, so I just wanted to make sure I clearly understand.
so services that he'll provide.
I got that.
Yeah, services that he'll provide, and how much we're going to pay him for services, and how much income we're gonna bring from our citizens. So that's the discussion.
And the non-subsidy part, the addition, would cover his services.
Well, that's the discussion.
Discussion we're having right
Okay,
now.
I mean, I just, as a resident and a child who doesn't play baseball but basketball, your service, it's so cheap, right? But I had to go to travel, I would like to come back, right? So if we had something like that, like you guys are doing with the new basketball program, like the extra $40 is like, charge me an extra $140 and I'll be happy, because it's so much more, it's costing us to have to go out of town for these things.
Yeah, so, I mean, basketball's another animal.
No,
And I could tell you how we got there, and we'll do that at another time, and I can help you understand how
Well, I
basketball
just
got to
think
where
that
it is.
this- As a resident, I think we should absolutely support this program, and I fully agree with the mayor that we shouldn't have to come at a cost any additional. We're already getting a phenomenal rate as parents. So whatever more we have to pay to offset the difference, I think is fair, and can we just put a vote to it and
Well, that's what we're working
get
towards
this
tonight.
for our kids?
We're working towards that answer. We're having a discussion at the current moment. Anybody else who would like to address the council?
Mr. Mayor, council, just as you guys were talking, we're just doing some quick math, as this stuff has gone on. My kids have aged out, none of them can play, so I have no skin in this game. May make me a little bit more honest about this than a parent, who has a child in it. If we're subsidizing $25,000, number one, I agree with all of you that if your child lives in the city, and if your child has a student ID in the city, that subsidy should stay in place. But we shouldn't be subsidizing somebody who lives in Riverbank, goes to school at Riverbank, and then decides to come over here and, play against ours. And they're doing it because it's cheap. Right. It's ridiculously cheap. The $40, per kid to pay Todd, 90, 75, you add that to all of that, you're not even keeping up with the cost of the cheapest T-ball that's on that graph up there. You couple that with, now if you can get the $55 per student player added to that fee, you may be at 100 students, you're talking about another $5,500 you're saving. You're going to be under $20,000. Now, what if you take that extra money that you saved this year and maybe roll it into next year's season to, help offset that cost a little bit better, or adjust for maybe less, players playing next year? Good chance you raise the rates, you're going to lose probably 50 to 100 kids, I would imagine. They're coming here because they don't mind spending the extra gas to come over and play on our fields and play in our league because it's so much cheaper. That being said, I really think that what the council should do is add a $40 fee all the way across the board. You're still not going to be, you're a drop in the bucket compared to everybody else up there. I don't think anybody's going to have a problem paying that. As Gabrielle was, was stating with basketball, that actually, apply this, the same theory. If you're having to put your kid in travel ball, well, now they're getting clinics from a professional. I also don't think that anybody has said tonight the coach training. Every one of their coaches is going to be better trained than what we have right now. I've never done baseball. My wife and I have done soccer. I didn't know the first thing about soccer, so those kids didn't learn anything, but we had a good time doing it. So that's probably what your baseball coaches are getting a lot of the time as well, whereas they will be getting an actual training out of that. You explain that to the public, you put it in words that they understand, they're going to be more than happy to pay that additional $40. And then you make that money back up on the $55, and that's exactly what I would do. I would add that markup of $55 to anybody that doesn't have a student ID or can't show proof of residency for the city. Should be pretty easy, I would think, to be able to add that to the process. That's just my 2 cents on it. Do with it what you will.
Mr. K?
Yes, sir.
The $55, where are you coming up with that at?
Math, $25,000.
Okay.
Divide that by 450.
Okay.
$55 per player.
So you're saying, like, for example, take the 50 for T-ball plus the 40 to cover, Todd's cost plus the 55?
If you're from out of town.
If you're from out of town.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, if you're from out of town, your child doesn't go to school with our kids, why not?
So the out-of-towners would pay an additional 55 on all these?
Yeah, an additional $55 fee, and like I said, that's gonna be, if you can get that out of 100 players, you're talking about a $5,500 savings this year.
That's still cheap.
And it's still cheaper than anything that's on.
And if you add that all together, you're still cheaper than everybody else that's up there. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to go ahead and, set your fee schedule that way at least, And as far as the scheduling and draft stuff goes, I don't have anything to say about any of that, but just the financial portion of it, I just sat back there, did some quick math, and I mean, it makes perfect sense to go ahead and try, those rates are ridiculous. There's no way that we can continue. And, as Mayor Bellinger, stated in the last meeting on this subject, at $25,000 that we're spending, we really shouldn't be subsidizing that, in perpetuity. At some point, that number should be shrinking as well. And I think that you may have a reasonable shot at doing so if you can start, making that additional fee apply to players that come out, from out of town. You are still going to have some of them. But I would imagine you're probably going to have some roll-off when it starts becoming comparably priced to all of the other leagues, especially when, really we're playing the same fields, we're playing the same games. We did softball with my daughter last year. We played on, every one of these, we played every one of these teams that are, cities that are up here and everything, moved around. They did the same. They came to Escalon and played here as well. So I think that that's probably the right way for it to go. I would encourage the parents here that are also coaches and have skin in this game to give their 2 cents on the same subject. But I really think that when you build that to the public and say, hey, you're getting a professional training, he's going to professionally train your coaches as well. So now you're not going to have, Caleb's dad out there trying to teach you how to play baseball when he can't hardly throw a ball. So, I think that, the citizens would be more than happy to pay that upcharge because they're going to be getting such higher quality. And, like Melinda has said, Member Walker has said, now they're going to be prepared when they go into high school. They're not going to be Escalon getting smashed by Oakdale High because Oakdale High has basically been playing, travel ball their entire lives. And we've been doing rec going into high school and just don't, hold a chance against them. I'm not sure that that's where we're at because honestly, I have no idea. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Ashel Walter. A couple questions. So with it staying only within the city of Escalon, would the teams get drafted based on skill set from the evaluations, or would it just be a random round out a team? So are we still going to have a kid throwing 60 miles an hour with another kid that's never played before throwing 35?
Maybe a question for Mr.
And as you pointed out the last couple times that we talked, we should be able to separate that. But it's totally up to the council how you want to structure. Do you want to keep it an even playing field, or do you want to create basically an upper, I hate ABC, but unfortunately that's what it is, right? So you could create an A team, create a B team. That comes down to how we do the.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is the county league.
Yeah, we're not doing that, but it would still be nice to have similar
It would be if we were going into the county league, but I think we were getting some pushback on that, trying to I think it was too much at one time for people to rip the Band-Aid off all at once, so to speak.
Yeah.
So my understanding is we'd be staying in the same league.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
I was
at least
more of-
initially, it would be basically the same league.
Yeah, and
how
I was
it's
more of like
structured.
having my son, 7, 8-year-old, playing with similar skill set versus such a wide range.
So
Which makes sense.
I think one of the hopes is as we move forward and create a board, the board will make that type of decision, which would have parent involvement, and we would be able to try and go forward possibly with the county league with that skill set. I think that this is kind of an introductory going forward, but the hope would be a board would decide that
And
kind
then-
of thing with parent inside, yeah.
Got it. And then from past experiences with evaluation, there hasn't been, at least I haven't seen a great turnout. So maybe a question for Todd, but like, how are we gonna, I don't know, necessarily enforce evaluations, or how does that, what's the plan for that?
So typically, we get coaches that will either tell their good players not to come to the tryout, so that they pick them up at the end. But that's where, after the tryout and you have your teams together, I like to have a practice with all of them together, because they'll show up for the practice, and it's a different ballgame. So now you can make some adjustments there. That's all part of the process. But creating these camps and the energy, and hopefully an opening day that's really spectacular, there'll be more involvement in the stuff leading up to the actual season. That's what we're looking for.
And then I might have missed it in the proposal, but it looked like the 2 camps were for 9-year-olds plus. So is 7, 8-year-olds exempted
That's
from?
still up to the council. Last time we spoke, we were saying leave the 7 and 8s alone, but we can always put that in. It wouldn't change my price.
I think it's important to even start it at a younger age.
I agree.
Selfishly, I have a 7, 8-year-old, so I'd want him to have access to the skills clinics.
Well, it totally changes their mindset, because now they're realizing, whoa, I'm getting a professional clinic as opposed to my dad taking me in the backyard and doing.
Yep.
And how we do it
Catch.
is we set up stations by ages, right? So 7, 8s maybe doing ground balls and those kind of things, and then the older kids might be hitting, the other kids might be in the outfield. And then as we rotate through, they will all have a chance. That way, we're not putting the 14-year-old or the 7-year-old on the field.
Got it. And then lastly, for Councilmember Walker, the separating some of those preseason tasks, I guess 2 cents is, if we're gonna subsidize the program, I wouldn't necessarily step over penny, like dollars to save dimes. Again, selfishly, not coaching many of the work schedules, but I'd probably be more willing to coach having access to the pre-season resources.
Or preseason resources.
As far as like coaching resources from Todd's team.
You would continue to.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's just so that he doesn't have to create a new website. We can turn it on right now, right? And so we already have, parents know where to go to sign up right now. That's the purpose
Got it.
of keeping some of these, because we're late already for registration. If you've seen, like, the 2 we play, Riverbank and Oakdale, they're open for registration right now. They're ready to go.
Okay.
So the purpose is just to turn it on. It's to do the same way everybody's already used to doing it, so that we can continue to get sponsorships in the same way we were doing it, that continue to get advertisement, continue to get that income in the same way that we were, and do it as soon as possible, instead of put this, a month in advance where we're already a week.
Okay.
And so moving forward, yeah, a board's gonna decide this, and we can open up a new website and people can understand how to do that. But this is just keeping familiarity for the citizens of Escalon. That's the
Perfect.
purpose
Yeah,
behind it,
so-
honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And so
Yeah.
I'd probably be more willing to sign up to be a coach if I had the coaching resources.
Oh, yeah, everything is
in advance
still,
Versus
yeah.
like opening day. Here we
Well,
go.
and to Mr. Showalter's point, maybe we turn it on and open it up, but explain to the coaches and start recruiting, hey, we now have this resource, so he's coming in to do the coaches clinics, et cetera, but he's gonna be a resource for you even before you get to that point.
Yeah. And the year that I did coach, it wasn't that I didn't want to coach or couldn't coach, it was that there was not a lot of support from any of the other parents, so it was all on me. And with work schedules, it was unfair to the kids to be like, sorry, I'm gone this practice, so it's canceled. So I think we'll have a deeper bench with coaches. So, but yeah, I look forward, and hopefully you guys pass the program the way that it's presented.
Can I ask you a
Plus
question?
7-year-olds.
So how do you think the city should market this new program to really get the community behind it?
Yeah, I think it was mentioned that it was we're going to a more competitive league, and I don't necessarily think that it's rec. I think that it needs to be presented, or there's an opportunity presented as a as a more better development within our league locally versus having to send our kids somewhere else to get that development if they want to continue to play.
So increased development as opposed to more competitive.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, let's bring it back here. We have any sort of a motion or more comments or questions on this topic, or would we like to pull a trigger?
I just have an overall comment, and I really appreciate Todd's willingness to really want to take over registration, coach recruitment, all of that. But as Councilmember Walker noted, we're already behind the 8 ball. And so I think that if there's a way that you can come alongside the city on those before season activities and start this process with the before games process, I think that moves forward.
4 games?
Yeah, that's where your contract would start, would be the before games, and then kind of act as a resource for coaches or for the city, but not necessarily, I mean, obviously you should be compensated, but at the same time, it's not all on you. The city is still doing our activities.
One of you,
I'm willing to make a motion if you
No,
want.
do we,
okay?
yeah, the before games thing, picture day, opening day, is that a thing we want staff to do or Todd to do? Todd does picture day and opening day as well?
City's doing registration, correct?
Everything in that first section, yeah. And then,
If that's
but
what,
coordinate with the city, obviously, yeah.
So to make it maybe simpler, I don't want to, I agree with you, we're too late in the game to try to change any of this.
Yeah.
But if I could come along with whoever's doing all the inputting and turning things on, and maybe do some tweaks and add some things that might help us in the process, then it'd just be added to what you already have established.
Okay.
Start selling the, if you're signing up little Johnny, the checkbox if I want to be a coach, assistant coach, but letting them know that there's going to be meetings with the coaches to be able to help them, support them, those kinds of things. So that's where I was more at with this new model that we're presenting today, is to basically help you with whatever I can help you with in that lead in.
So
My hope will be that on our Facebook advertisements, that we can be able to put something like that on the marketing, yeah.
So Todd, with that, instead of 18K, roughly what would that be?
I'm just trying to get this deal done for you guys. For me, it's for the kids. It really is. It's not about money, it's for the kids. Right now, coaching, what I do at Modesto Christian costs me $10,000 a year.
Okay.
So, you want to make it 16? Just make it an even 16, and I'll just sit alongside with whoever's handling the website, throw in some ideas, help with the Facebook, help with the Instagram, and then work with putting the meetings together with the coaches and those kinds of things. You already have your uniforms in place. I'd like to set up a uniform sizing day. That typically makes it easier on your uniform guy. Also, we usually do something like that at Dick's Sporting Goods, because then Dick's Sporting Goods has a discount for your families. They get 20% off on that signing that weekend that you come out and do that. So, offer those kinds of things that we're going to help save the kids' families money before the season starts. It's like socks and belts and bats and gloves, things that they might need.
So, Mr. Mayor,
yes?
I make a motion.
Okay.
Wait, can I pause?
Sure.
Is the intention to retain our current field, Randall? No. Are we going to have our current field maintenance people taking care of field and prep and all of that? And then the intention is also to keep the umpire service, correct, for both of those things? Okay, my intention is to keep the same field staff as long as they're willing to prep our fields, and then also retain our umpire services as well.
So we're striking that line item under during season?
Where?
coordinate umpires and.
No, he
field-
coordinates. He tells them when the games are and when they
Okay.
need to get there. And then, and say like when games are rescheduled, he has to call umpires and call field prep and make sure field's prepped for the new rescheduled games.
Okay.
We do have to make sure we have uniforms correct, because I know you said sizing. We typically just do a t-shirt. They mark it when they sign up, if they're a small, medium, or large, check, and they get a shirt and hat. So we'll just have to make sure we're coordinating with that. We don't usually go to a fitting. And it does keep costs low. And I know that there was a change for our 14U, 12U girls, where they went off of the major league teams and they went to like purple team, gold team, and that saves some money as well for the city. So that'll be something that you can consider as well. Okay.
None of that's a problem.
Okay.
You're getting a great price from the city manager.
Okay.
I was just trying to create an event that would create more community connection. We usually like to see one here at the school or at the community center.
Okay.
And then one possibly at like a pretty good store that those families are getting the discount for that weekend or whatever else they might.
Okay, well, that's a yeah, no, it'll be.
The city, how you guys want to handle it.
It'll be a consideration. I don't mind either way. I'm just letting you know what parents expect as they come into the season. Okay.
A quick question. After all this is said and done, does all this go back to rec? Or does this stay at council?
The rec made a recommendation to the city council to approve or consider this.
But after it's considered or approved, it goes back to rec, or does it stay with us?
Stays with you. You're the deciding body.
All right. So I'm gonna
Go ahead.
make a motion to approve a contract to, remind me of your last name, Todd.
Davis.
Todd Davis for $16,000 for this year, starting with the before games portion that's in front of us. And increase the fees by approximately $40 at each level to cover, or I guess it's less than $40 now that it's whatever that math equals, to cover the cost of Todd's fees.
$36.
Okay. And then do the adder of approximately $55 for Escalon or non-Escalon or Escalon Unified, anybody within the Escalon Unified School District wanting to play.
Yeah, I would, can I add one more thing to that motion potentially?
Sure.
Same motion, but development of the external board during the timeline that we're not, during this pilot season.
So I wish to amend my motion.
Fine.
Thank you.
I don't get the sense that this isn't Parliament.
I want to hear it again.
I can't remember all that.
From the top.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right.
Oh, mouthful, man.
Long 6 months, I'll tell you.
Hey, we did it.
I'd love for my computer to work. All right. Next up, council communications. Councilman Stroman, what do you got tonight?
I'm going to make this very quick.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Appreciate it.
Just want to thank Todd. I want to thank Mr. Showalter and Mr. Cave for providing your input, as well as Ms. Vargas. That's what we need, and really appreciate you guys taking the time. But more importantly, I really want to thank two of my fellow council members, Ms. Walker and Mayor Pro Tem Hagan, for really stepping up and grabbing this bull by the horns, because I feel like this is what baseball, softball has needed for a long time. I appreciate everything that staff has done, but I feel like this really steps up the game. So kudos to both of you for all of your hard work on this.
All right. Councilman Walker, what do you got tonight?
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Thank you to Todd. Bye. Thank you. No, just thanks
just
for
some
being
thank
here.
yous.
Just some thank yous. Thanks for being here. I know it seems like this was, rushed and whatnot in 6 months. It's been years in the making. This has been probably 5 or 6 years in the making, like going forward and trying to improve this program. So, this is a nice little relief to move forward and actually get these programs going forward. Our recreation is taxed. This will let staff actually have a lot of time to do other things. Our recreation has been asked in the past several years to do more than they have done in the past. We used to recreate at school sites, had many basketball courts at El Bertel, had tennis courts at the high school, just acres of asphalt and lots of asphalt, acres of grass, 3 tracks, 2 softball fields. We used to have all that, and that's all not accessible at the moment for us. And so we're being asked to do a lot of things we weren't asked before. There weren't these needs. So going forward, one program, going forward, trying to get the rest going. Thank you for your guys' support and not just, our positive support in solving these problems moving forward as a community. Really appreciate that. And then tomorrow, if you have not submitted your ballot, I would encourage you to get out and vote, whether it doesn't matter how you think or want or whatever, either way, how you vote, just make sure you get out the vote and put in your 2 cents. So with that, good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Councilman Engel.
All right. I had a long political spiel, but due to the length of tonight's meeting, I will keep it brief. I just wanted to publicly state, as we get results tomorrow for our national and local elections, let's not forget who the real enemy is. We as neighbors and citizens of America are not the enemy. The state and the federal government have done a magnificent job at dividing us. They've divided us by political party, race, gender, religious belief, and economic status. Earlier in our meeting, we all recited the Pledge of Allegiance. And we stated during that pledge that we are one nation under God and indivisible. However, as a country, we are divided. And I know this part is kind of cliche, but if we can unite and find common ground, I believe that whatever tomorrow's results are, we as a community and as a country can come together and drive real change. We got to remember that united we stand and divided we fall. And I fear for our great country. And I fear that if we do not unite soon, decline in America will continue. And good luck to everybody tomorrow, including our local candidates. I had a bunch, but it's very late, and I will yield my time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hagan.
Well, I think that was some wise words, I think. I think we need to really understand not to get emotionally reactive and to, be logical about the events that you see in front of you the next week or two, no matter what they are. Otherwise, a few things I wanted to say is good luck to the candidates. It'll be whoever's in these seats, it'll be good to work with you and hopefully move forward with, Escalon, kind of an Escalon first agenda, so to speak. I want to say to Baldonado and Murray, that's an amazing job they did saving that elderly man. It takes courage to go into a fire like that. Anytime we see things like that, it's nice to see you kind of tip their hat to them, so to speak. The Public Works, I wanted to say, you did a great job on those shade nets. And, I'll go ahead and, on social media, I wanted to kind of point out each individual for their good job, but they did a great job in combination with the Chamber and Escalon Strong, bringing that together for our citizens for this next baseball season. So thank you. Diana, I haven't said it yet, but you're doing a good job. I appreciate it. I know I said it a little earlier, but not on the mic. So keep up the good work. And don't worry about the spelling, Jalen. It's Irish, though. So, and that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Appreciate that. I'll try and be brief really quick. Great discussions tonight. We moved a couple of solid agenda items forward for our town. I think they're moving in the right direction for us. I'm looking forward to the success of both of those things that we talked about tonight. And like everybody else has said, tomorrow is the last day to vote. Make your vote count by showing up if you haven't done it yet. They all matter. Big elections, small election, your vote does matter. So voice your opinion wherever it lands, and it'll make us better. With that, we're going to go ahead and adjourn for a closed session, and then we'll come back should there be anything to report out if that does happen. Thank you.
Getting it up.
What's that?
Hello, everybody. We are now back from closed session. We have nothing to report out, and we will adjourn the meeting for tonight. Thanks if you stayed on long, it's long. Good night.
Ready, guys?
Anybody on?
Not on yet?
I'm leaving. Was there anybody on tonight?
This conference is no longer being recorded.
You guys licensed today,